Chapter 21, Public Records, Title and Closing. The last chapter here in this book. I know there's a chapter 22, but that's all about math, and we've been doing math problems as we come across them. And even in this chapter, we're going to have a math problem still. The
Oh,
final
wow.
problem. So let's go over the chapter 21, Public Records, Titles and Closing. So in this chapter, we're going to explain New Jersey's Recording Acts, that established chain of title. We're going to learn what chain of title is, what are the four evidences of title, and we're going to learn about marketable or merchantable title. Um, we're going to summarize the components of the closing process, and we're going to learn the process of math and prorations. We're going to use an example of proration of your property taxes. Okay, so, and then that'll be the end of this. So, the Recording Act is a law that allows any party with an interest in a parcel of land to attach a document in the public records to that property that are related to the ownership of that property. And that's usually at the county hall of records, not the municipal level. So, filing your documents in the public records gives legal, public, and constructive notice to the world of our interest in the property. Yes, constructive notice is a term we're going to learn about in a moment. The county clerk is generally the recorder of deeds and documents in the public record. However, there is a separate registrar of deeds in Camden, Essex, Hudson, and Passaic counties, because these are some of the more densely populated counties within the state of New Jersey. So they have their own dedicated registrar of deeds. So, did you guys highlight this?
Yeah.
Not yet. Not yet.
Nope, not yet. What are you waiting for?
Okay, I'm done.
All right. So, what is the necessity of recording? Well, it sets the priority of interest, at least when it comes to repayments in a lien repayment order. So, priority of interest establishes the order in which lien repayments get paid in the event of a foreclosure. That could be worded totally better. And I could do that in a sentence. Here we go. So the priority of establishes priority of interests. Recording documents, public records, establishes priority of interests. Specifically, I can say specifically, see, recording documents in the public records establishes priorities. In the case of liens, establishes the lien repayment order according to the date of recording in the public records. In the event of foreclosure. Okay, so in case of liens, let's see, pertaining to liens, It establishes the lien repayment order according to the date of recording in the public records in the event of foreclosure. So property taxes jump to the head of the line. Then we have mechanics liens, which are contractor liens, which are retroactively backdated to the date that the materials were delivered or when the work began, whichever occurred first. Recording of documents is when a written notice is added to the county records of land ownership where the land is located. So that, you know, if we have two people that have a deed, who's the owner? Whoever records their deed first. In the event somebody was doing something unscrupulous and, you know, they sold the same property twice to two different people, gave them both a deed on the same day. Well, who's the owner? Well, the race is
Public
on.
one.
The race is on. Whoever records their deed in the public record first,
Right.
they secure their order, and they're the owner of the property. Even though a deed is valid without recording in the public records, how do you prove who got it first? Well, you record your interest in the public records. So in the case of liens, liens establishes whoever records it in the public records, that determines who gets paid back their liens first in the event of foreclosure. Same thing occurs when it pertains to ownership of documents. And any document must be acknowledged before it can be recorded. I'm going to put there.
Something.
And what does it mean to record a document?
Yeah. It can be recorded in the document.
Yeah, what does it mean to record a document, though?
In the public.
It means you added it to the public records.
Right. Public record.
Okay.
So recording in the public record. It's like it can be recorded in public. Okay.
There we go. Slide corrected. All right. So to be eligible for recording that instrument, an instrument's a fancy word for document, it must be acknowledged, notarized, or proved to be authentic before a notary, judge, attorney, or elected a politician. That they acknowledge that they know who you are, or they check your IDs and certify that you are who you say you are before you sign those documents and add them into the public records. So, caveat emptor. It means let the buyer beware. It's your responsibility to perform your own due diligence before purchasing a property. You want to find out there's a problem with the property? Caveat emptor, your home inspection. If you're for the structure, there's a problem with the pool, we'll get a pool inspection. Is there a problem with the neighbor's fence being over the property line? Get a survey. You know, you want to find out if there's any issues with liens or outstanding liens other than those the seller has disclosed. Do a title search. So these are just different forms of inspections, home inspections, right? Property inspections. You're inspecting the ownership documents. You're inspecting the survey of the property. You're inspecting the physical structures. You know, these are all different kinds of inspections we get in the real estate process. So caveat emptor means let the buyer beware. If you want to know if there's a problem, whose responsibility is to discover that?
The seller.
It's your own. No, it's the buyer's. Seller's not responsible for disclosing to you. Well, seller should be disclosing any known issues, but
right.
If you are buying a property and you want to find out if there's a problem with the property, you don't rely on the seller. Caveat emptor. Let the buyer beware. It's your responsibility to do your own inspections.
Yeah.
You find out if the property's worth it. What do? You get an appraisal. right?
Oh, yeah.
You want to find out if there's any issues with the structure, the heating system, the roof is leaking or anything, get a home inspection. Want to find out if anything is crossing over, illegally extending over the property line, get a survey. You know, you want to find out if there's any outstanding liens or improper transfers in the past throughout history on this property, get a title search.
So whatever we do the homework, like to search on it, whatever it is, to find out, buyer has to pay all charges, right? Of course.
Yeah. Buyer's responsible. That's coming up in this chapter too. Who's responsible
Okay.
for doing what? Well, anything the buyer wants, the buyer's responsible for paying.
I know.
It goes, you know.
Oh,
Constructive notice. Here's another constructive notice, caveat emptor, constructive notice, and actual notice. These are terms you need to add to your definition list. You need to know what they mean. They will be on exams. Okay. So what is constructive notice now? Well, constructive notice means that the information is available in the public record because it was added to the public records. So whether you search the public records and you find it and look at that information or not, the courts will assume that you have knowledge of that information that's in the public records. Why? Because caveat emptor. It's your responsibility for search.
oh, yeah.
So the information is in the public records, so the courts will assume you have knowledge of it already. So courts assume the interested parties did their research and therefore assuming they have knowledge of that information. Even if they didn't check the public records, that's your problem. You should have. It's available. The information's there. Why didn't you look? That's what constructive notice means. The information's available in the public record. And that's distinguished from actual notice, which is any information which you have direct knowledge of. So if you did search the public records now you have actual notice of that information that was in the public records. It's any information which you have direct knowledge. Okay, easy enough to understand. Constructive notice means the information was recorded in the public records, and courts assume you have knowledge of that because you'd searched the public records. Actual notice is any information which you have direct knowledge of. So once you search those public records, you now have direct actual notice. Okay. Now, long-term leases, 2 years or more, they can be recorded in the public records. So people can record their long-term interest in a property. Well, if you search the public records, you'd find it if they recorded it. Okay, so let's highlight caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. Constructive notice, or what the buyer could find out, which is distinguished from actual notice. I wrote direct knowledge over actual notice, or what the person actually knows. Now, where it says constructive notice or what the buyer could find out, I wrote here a little reference because it's in the public record, because it's recorded in the public record. Take those notes and let me know when you got them.
So there is a little map over here. Construction notice, inspection of the property and recorded instrument. And all person charged with knowing. In the book, I see the small figure 21.1.
Okay.
That is.
Well, constructive notice, if you bother to look, you inspect the property records.
Yeah.
That are in the public records that have been recorded there. So courts assume you have knowledge of it because it's in the public record, because if you are interested in that, then you would have searched the public records. That's what they mean by all persons charged with knowing.
Mm-hmm. So court assumed that you already
yeah, if any information that's in the public records, courts assume you already have knowledge about it, because if you're interested in this property, you would have searched.
Okay.
So it's your problem if you didn't. Courts assume you have knowledge about that information because it's there. All you got to do is look.
Yeah.
And once you look, you have
Understood.
actual notice.
Got it.
Okay. Everybody got that?
Mm-hmm.
You need a second?
Yeah, I got
I'm
it.
good.
Okay. Raphael, you good?
Yeah, I got it.
All right. So actual notice, once again, is any information which they have direct knowledge of. That line is on the top of page 383. Actual notice, any information which they have direct knowledge.
Yes.
Chain of title. Chain of title. Where do we see this? Is this here? Yes. Still on the same page, 383. So chain of title shows the record of ownership of the property over a period of time. It links one owner to the next using the documents found that are recorded in the public records. Each owner is a link in the chain. And if you could link one owner to the next, you're now creating a chain, right? A chain
Yeah.
of many links. And each owner is a link. So if they recorded their documents in the public record, you could link, you have one link, and then the next link connects them. You're now creating a chain. It's a short.
DNA. It's a DNA.
I'm sorry?
DNA.
Yeah, like
Okay.
DNA. It's the same way, right? You got
Yeah.
you got to have the links together. There's many links in the chain. Each owner is one of the links, and when you trace back in history one link to the next, you could link one owner to the next. Now, if one owner failed to record their interest in the public records, you cannot link the property owner, one owner to the next. So that's known as a gap or a break in the chain of title.
Mm.
Okay. And when there's a break or a gap in a chain of title, that creates a cloud on the title. Remember the dark thunderstorm cloud? I picture that when you hear the term break or gap in the chain of title, that creates a cloud on the title. Title means
Yeah.
ownership. And if you got a thunderstorm cloud hovering over your house, you don't want that. So we want to clear that up. That's indicative of a problem, of an issue. So we want to clear up any clouds on the title.
Mm.
It could be that, hey, maybe only one owner signed the deed to transfer the ownership, or there was never a satisfaction of lien recorded for the mortgage. That could create a problem for us down the road. So we want to make sure it's cleared up now. So a gap or break in the chain of the titles when ownership cannot be linked from one owner to the next using the information available because someone may not have recorded in the public records. Now, let me make sure I got the chain definition right here. I didn't read it. I went off the top of my head. See, chain shows the record of ownership of the property over a period of time. It links one owner to the next using the documents found recorded in the public records. Each owner is a link in the chain, and if you can link one owner to the next by tracing the documents in the public records, this is called chain of title. Okay, that's a good definition. All right, and I like that definition, actually. I'm going to suggest they add that to the book.
Suit to quiet title. That court called suit to what title?
Yeah, suit to quiet title. Title's ownership. You're trying to quiet the rumblings of anybody that may be trying to lay claim or interest in the property. So you're asking a judge now, you're going to show your evidence. You're asking a judge now to render a decision as to who's the owner of the property. Maybe when documents were not recorded in the public records, we're unable to locate them or whatever, but we could show that this person sold it to that person, but they just never recorded the documents. And now I bought it from that person, or I bought it from someone else who they sold it to. We need to clear up that gap in the chain, and the judge could do that. Okay, through the court suit to quiet title. That's one way. Or you could get that owner, if you could find them, if they're still alive and they're still around, you could have that listed owner who never recorded their interest in the public records to sign a quitclaim deed. What does signing a quitclaim deed do? Just gives up any
Give it
interest
gives
in
up.
the property. So that clears up the break in the chain as well. So 388, chain title. Explanation.
Quit up.
Quitclaim
What's the
deed.
name?
A quitclaim deed. Right? I got it right here on the slide. See the slide here? Gaps like these
Yeah,
can be bridged or
quitclaim deed.
with a quitclaim deed or a suit to quiet title.
Got it. Mhm. Got it. Okay.
Hey, let's-
And we are on. Okay, so you guys got these explanations highlighted?
Yeah.
So a deed is not proof of title, it's not evidence of title. What are the four evidences or proofs of ownership? Evidence of title or proofs of ownership. It could be worded either way. They'll probably use the wording evidence of title on exams. In New Jersey, there's four forms of proof. There's four evidences of title, aka proof of ownership. What are they? Abstract of title with attorney's opinion. That's somebody known as an abstractor is hired to go search the public records and pull out the information from the public records and put it on a piece of paper in chronological order according to the dates that they were recorded in the public record. And then they turn over this list of all these documents that were found in the public record according to their dates, and they turn it to an attorney. An attorney will then examine the documentation in the public records and render their opinion whether you got good, clear title of ownership there. So if the abstractor makes a mistake and misses something, well, they got their form of errors and omissions insurance. You'd have to sue them. If the attorney rendering their opinion made a mistake, well, you got to sue them. Good luck with that. Most commonly here in New Jersey, we have a title insurance policy where you hire a insurance company to give you title insurance to ensure your ownership is good. But they'll only insure you once they search the public records. So they have their own abstractors on their staff, and they search the public records back a minimum of 60 years, but as far back as they could possibly search, linking the ownership records to make sure that there's nothing going to pop up, no claims of ownership or improper transfers or any liens that have not been disclosed. And then they'll issue a title insurance policy. So if anything should pop up later, you're insured, they'll cover it. Then we have a Torrens certificate. Make a note there that this is not used in New Jersey. New Jersey does not have a Torrens type of system where there's a neutral third party that holds onto the deed, and they don't give it to the buyer until they pay off the mortgage loan, and they don't give it, but they hold on to it. So if you default in making your payments, they could give the deed back to the lender, and it doesn't go through the court systems. New Jersey, we have a judicial foreclosure system. In states that have Torrens systems, they do not. The foreclosure could be a lot swifter process. You're not making your payments? Here you go, lender. Here's the deed to the property. Boom. That's the foreclosure. It's a non-judicial foreclosure. And then we also have a certificate of title. This is another form of ownership, proof of ownership. It's often verbal, though. It's not even in writing. It's the verbal representation. Who would rely on that? Often this is a verbal representation from the attorney saying, yeah, I went down and checked the public records. You're good to go. You got good ownership. Would you want to rely on that as proof of ownership? I wouldn't. But who would? Somebody does, apparently, because it's one of the proofs or evidences of title. Well, a lender might, because the lender will call the closing agent or the attorney, who's usually the attorney. They'll call the closing agent before they authorize the release of the funds to continue with doing the purchase. They're going to want to first make sure that good, clear title's been established. So they'll be on the phone with the attorney and they'll be like, do we have evidence of title? And the attorney will say, yes, I went down personally and searched the public records and examined the documents, and we have good, clear title. And so that's basically their certification of title. It's just a verbal representation to the lender. They're probably recording the phone call for whatever that counts for. But then the attorney will be accountable to them, you know. But these are the 4 evidences of title. This one's not even in writing. So this is the most common one we use here in New Jersey. Although this one is possible, I would rely on this one, the title insurance policy. A deed is not proof of title. Here we go. Some more run-on words here, right? A deed is not proof of title. These are the 4 evidences of title. A deed is the document used to transfer ownership, but is not evidence of title.
Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
Give me a second. Give me a
let me
second.
back it up.
Good. I'm good.
So here we go. Deed is not proof or evidence of title. Deed's a document used to transfer one's right, title, or interest in property, but is not proof or evidence of title. There are 4 evidences of title: the abstract of title with attorney's opinion, certificate of title, which is often oral or implied, title insurance policy, and there's 2 types. One's the lender's policy, one's the buyer's policy, and we recommend the buyer get both. And there's a Torrens certificate, but that one's not used in New Jersey. You still need to know it. It's not used in New Jersey. That's what you need.
Okay.
Okay. Because they'll ask, what are the 4 evidences of title? You need to know what the 4 evidences of title are. And which one's not used in New Jersey?
Torrens certificate.
Boom, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
And which is the most common one that's used in New Jersey? Probably the title insurance policy. Because we get a bargain and sale CAG type deed and title insurance. Okay.
So, mhm. So just comparing, when we buy the car, we have title. For house also, we have title, right?
Car title is the document that proves your ownership.
Right.
In real estate, there's no document called title. It's just a word that means ownership. Got it?
So when you had title, you don't have no ownership.
Well, title is just a word that means ownership,
Uh-huh.
but a deed is not proof of ownership. Look, I have
A
a
deed.
blank. Yeah, the deed is not proof of ownership. I got blank deeds on my computer. If I fill out one of those deeds for your house, do I have the right to sell it because I have a deed to your house?
No, no.
But I got the deed and it's got the information on it.
But it just
You see how a deed is not evidence of title? It doesn't mean that I have
it
the
doesn't.
house to begin with. So the deed, simply having a deed is not evidence of title. So what is? We just went over them. abstract of title with attorney's opinion, certificate of title, title insurance policy, or Torrens certificates.
Not in use, New Jersey.
Okay.
Got it.
Any questions? Are we all good?
Yeah, so for house, when I bought the house, I do have these three things, right? Abstract title with attorney, certificate of title, and title insurance policy, right?
I have one of these.
Okay, all these three.
You'll have an abstract of title with attorney's opinion, or certificate of title, which is verbal, so you don't have that.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Title insurance policy, probably, most likely. And then did you purchase title insurance when you bought the house? Should have. Your attorney should have explained it to you and then highly recommended that you get it. Okay.
Means I don't remember now. Miss my husband knows.
Then you have a Torrens certificate, but we don't use those here. So
Okay.
New Jersey, when it comes to the buyers, you'll most likely have used either an abstract of title with attorney's opinion or a title insurance policy. Should have been a title insurance policy, and you should have title insurance.
Oh, so you can have only one. You don't need abstract title with attorney opinion, right?
Yeah, you're gonna have one or the other.
One of the.
Which one is best?
A title insurance policy. Look, if you get an abstract of title with attorney's opinion, if the attorney screws up, you'd have to sue them.
Oh yeah.
Like I said, good luck with that.
Oh man.
I mean, if they screwed up, if they didn't find that something that there was an improper transfer where all the owners didn't sign the deed when they transferred the ownership some previous time, or maybe there was a outstanding lien on the property that there was never a satisfaction of lien recorded and he missed it. So remember, liens attached to properties, not the property owner. So now you bought a property, it has a lien on it. You're responsible for paying it through your property. You want to keep your property. You're not personally responsible for paying it, but your property is. His lien's attached to the property, not the property owner. So I would say title insurance is the best deal because the title insurance company will do a thorough research, more thorough than that attorney would. And because they're going to issue you insurance policy that they're going to have to pay on if they screwed up. Right? So they reimburse you for any losses or claims or what have you. Because if somebody makes a claim that they're the rightful owner of the property because their grandpappy's grandpappy got screwed out of the property, he never signed a deed transferring the ownership, and if you could prove it, then all the sales that happened after that are illegitimate. They're void. So your current ownership, you're like, yeah, but I bought this property. I got a mortgage loan. I signed the documents. Yeah, so you could pay a thief money to buy the stolen TV that they smashed out a window and they stole a TV and then they could sell it to you and you paid them. What's your argument going to be? But I paid them for the stolen TV. Well, same thing with the real estate. You don't get to keep stolen property because that's basically what it is if there was an improper transfer, right? So you would have to give it up. Are you going to get any money back? No. Why are they going to give you money? You bought stolen property. You got screwed in your own research. Should have got title insurance. If you got title insurance with the lenders and the buyer's policy, it'll pay off any outstanding balance on your loan. And it'll refund the buyer. It'll reimburse the buyer for any money they put out to buy this property up until this point and any mortgage payments they've been making. So you tell me which one's the best.
Of course, title insurance.
Okay. When I put it like that, insurance, yeah. But now no one's half the battle.
And certificate of title, that's verbally, right?
Yeah, that's the verbal implication where an attorney says, yeah, I searched the public records and you got good, clear title.
Okay.
And they would tell that to a lender. And the lender would be like, okay, then you can release the funds. So a lender would accept a certificate of title, but we should not. Okay. So here's just my basic little rundowns of these different things that we just went over. An abstract of title with attorney's opinion. An abstractor searches the public record and makes a list of all the documents pertaining to ownership that could be located in the public records according to the date. Then the information is examined by an attorney who determines if the owner has good title, free from liens and other defects. Title insurance, there's two types of policies. We got the lender's policy that would pay off any amount owed, and a buyer's policy will pay back any amount paid.
Reimburse.
Title insurance policies issued, the insurance company has their own abstractor search the public records back as far as they can, or at least 60 years minimum, to make sure there were no improper transfers or defects in the title before issuing an insurance policy. And here's a little note I put down here for you. Buyers cannot shop for better prices when purchasing title insurance. The price is established by the state, and it's based on the value of the property that's being purchased. But I bet you could find some title companies that charge different amounts. You know why? They charge you convenience fees, a delivery fee. We come to you to sign the paperwork and deliver it, and the mobile notary services and all that nonsense. So they could be much more expensive if they're adding in those kinds of costs. All right, so what the highlight in the book? Not much. Abstract title is a brief history of the instruments appearing in the county records that affect title to the parcel in question. And then you can read all this if you want to learn about it in more detail. But I just gave you the basic rundown of what it is and what it does.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the attorney's opinion of title, which the condition of the ownership, this report is called the attorney's opinion of title. So for attorney's opinion of title, which is not used extensively as it was in the past, the seller's attorney usually orders the abstract, continues to cover the current date. It is then submitted to the buyer's attorney, who must examine the entire abstract. Following his or her detailed examination, the attorney must evaluate the facts to determine whether you got good, clear title or not. So the attorney renders their opinion. Let's see. To protect purchasers, title insurance is used increasingly more often these days. It's usually required by the lending institution when a new mortgage is placed.
Mm. Yeah, they're saying it, right? It's better to buy title insurance.
Yeah, because title insurance is what? It serves as the protection, just like homeowners insurance in case of fire. Title insurance would cover the collateralized property in case of somebody stepping forward and proving that they're the owner, or maybe some outstanding liens popping up or something of that nature, right? Mm. So that's what title insurance policy means. And then we have, okay, so this is continuation of the owner's title insurance policy. They basically say for an additional charge, you could also purchase an owner's insurance policy to protect their interest in the property, because there's that lender's policy and the buyer's policy, like I was saying. So state of New Jersey regulates the rates that may be charged for title insurance, both original policies and ones that are reissued. So there you go. You can't shop around for a better rate because they should all be standardized by the state based on the value of the property. Okay. And then we have the Torrens certificate, which is not used in New Jersey. Anytime a property is sold, the attorney prepares a certificate of title and searches the public record, and then must register it in a central hall of records. New Jersey, we have 21 central halls of record, but it's not mandatory that you record your ownership there. It's highly suggested, but it's not mandatory. So they search the public record, and they must, in a Torrens certificate, system, they must register the property, the certificate, in the central hall of records, where the ownership transfer takes place and who the owner and buyer is. Now, this is optional in New Jersey. In New Jersey, we're not required to record our documents in the public record. Okay? It's highly recommended you do, though. We have 21 counties with a Hall of Record keeping that we just saw at the beginning of this chapter. Right? So a torrent system is not used in New Jersey. And if we want to read this, in some other states, torrent systems of land registration is used to prove title. Once an applicant has proved that they're the owner, title is registered and a torrent certificate is issued. At any given time, the certificate is in the registrar's office, reveals the owner of the land and all mortgages, judgments, similar liens. It does not reveal unpaid federal or state taxes or things of that nature. Okay. And certificate of title, that's the one that's verbal or implied, where the attorney goes down, searches the public records, and then renders their opinion. They say, you got good title. So what they say here, in some rural localities, a certificate of title is prepared by an attorney that's used, and no abstract is prepared. The attorney just examines the public records and issues a certificate of title that expresses their opinion on the title status. It is not, however, a title insurance policy and does not carry the full protections of such a policy. A lawyer's opinion of title is often all implied representation. The person who sustains damages by relying on it may look to the lawyer for satisfaction, aka you need to sue the lawyer. Good luck with that.
Yeah, well, so
Yep. Go ahead. What were you saying?
It's hard to sue a lawyer because you're not going to win a lawyer.
Because you rely on their opinion, But like I said, good luck on suing a lawyer. They got all the time and day to sit in court. They're not going to be paying a lawyer to go to court. They are the lawyer. You gotta pay a lawyer to go fight them.
No recommended certificate title.
I wouldn't. All right, so here is once again a slide. You may have seen it. I know I've shown it to you guys several times in the past, but we haven't seen it in a while. Title is just a word that means ownership, and there's no document in real estate called title.
Right.
A deed. There are two different ways to define what a deed is, but saying the same exact thing. The first way is the dumbed down, keep it simple, stupid explanation. It is a deed is a document used to transfer ownership, but is not proof of ownership. The second way of explaining it makes you sound more learned and educated. It says a deed is an instrument used to convey title, but is not evidence of title. Both of these statements are saying the same exact thing.
Same exact thing, yeah. It's just a vocabulary thing.
Yeah, convey is another word for transfer, is another word for proof, and title is another word for ownership, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead. You had a question?
No, I'm good.
No.
So a deed is also used to transfer one's rights or interest in a property, like their partial ownership rights, air rights, mineral rights, subsurface rights, or partial ownership interest. So ownership is transferred upon delivery and acceptance of the deed itself, which does not need to be signed or dated by the buyer unless the buyer records the deed in the public records, and their signatures then need to be acknowledged to prevent forgeries. So when we record documents, recording a document is adding it to the public records in the county hall of records where ownership documents and land records are kept. Why do we record documents in the public record? To put the world on notice of our interest in the property. What kind of notice? Constructive notice. So regarding our new ownership or attaching a lien to the property, etc., etc. So what are the four evidences of title? What are the four proofs of ownership?
Abstract. Yeah.
got the title,
Certificate of the title and tolls.
certificate of title, title insurance policy, and a Torrens certificate, which is not used in New Jersey. So if you want to snap a picture of this slide for your studies, if you're not sure if you have it already, that would be a good time to do so.
Okay, I'm doing it.
Deed, recording documents, and the 4 evidences of title.
I did it.
Get it.
You don't.
Yep.
Mhm.
So what does it mean if something's marketable? Here, let me take that off altogether. What does it mean if something is marketable or merchantable? What does that mean?
Something you can sell. Something is
Stop right there. You got it. You hit the nail on the head. Ding, 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 ding. If something's marketable, that means it's sellable.
Sellable.
Yep. So, look, move slides. So, marketable or merchantable title is one that's so free from defects, significant defects, other than those the buyer has agreed to accept. Can you buy a property that has defects? Sure. As long as the seller made you aware of them and you're okay with it. Like, can you buy a property with liens on it? Sure, you can. It's encumbered by something. Can you move around if you're encumbered by if I jump on your back? Yes, it's just a lot harder to. Can you sell real estate if it's encumbered by something? Yes, it's just a lot harder to. So, marketable or merchantable title is one that's free enough from significant defects that someone's still willing to take on the ownership of. And then it's sellable, right? Marketable means sellable. It's free from significant defects like encumbrances or deed restrictions or liens that the seller has disclosed and the buyer is willing to accept. The purchaser can be assured against having to defend the quality of the title, and it's useful to buy title insurance for both the buyer and the lender in case of the quality of title as defects that could cause the new owner to lose the property or have to pay off the liens in order to prevent a foreclosure. So we should highlight marketable or merchantable title is one that's so free from significant defects other than those the buyers agreed to accept.
All right. Good.
Okay. And what page is that? 385.
385.
All right. Okay, so closing of the title. The loan funds are dispersed in exchange for the deed, and there's 2 parts of a mortgage. The note, which is the financing instrument. It states out how much you borrowed, what the interest rate is, what the terms of repayment are, etc. It's what makes the borrower personally liable for the full amount they owe, that they borrow. So even in the event of foreclosure, the lender can chase after them for any balance that had not been repaid. The mortgage is the security instrument. That's your pledge, that you're pledging of the property as security for the loan. Although you're not giving up the property, you're living in it. You're telling the lender, hey, if you lend me your money, I'll pay you back according to the terms in the note. And if I fail to do so, you could sell the property at auction, use the proceeds to pay off the debt. Yeah, you could foreclose on me, then sell the property at auction and use the proceeds to pay off the debt.
Hmm.
And you remember from way back when, hypothecation. Hypothecation, and a mortgage is an example of hypothecation. It's simply pledging a property for security as a debt without giving up that security. It's kind of the opposite of what they do at pawn shops. Okay, so you're not giving up the property; you're actually living in it. The lender has to come and get it if you violate those terms. All right. Now, here's something that's usually a question on exam sooner than later. Hint, hint. There's two transactions that usually take place at the closing, at least when people are not buying all cash anyway. There's the closing of the sale. If they're buying cash, that's all that happens. If they're buying with a mortgage loan, there's the closing of the sale and there's the closing of the loan. Isn't the loan a transaction all unto itself? Isn't that a big whole ordeal you got to go through in order to borrow money to buy a house? So that's a transaction that needs to be closed as well. And then once you close on the loan, then you sign the papers and close on the house. And this usually all happens at the closing table at the attorney's office. Okay. So as long as you got that understanding, you'll be able to get this question right. But let's see. So the closing of the sale, let's read the definition for this. The seller delivers the deed in exchange for the purchase price, and the seller delivers clear title by deed, and the property is delivered in the same condition as when the buyer made the offer. In other words, they're not removing the toilet bowls or the kitchen sink or counters or the chandeliers that they didn't say they were taking with them. Okay. And the closing of the buyer's loan, which is a transaction unto its own. The buyer delivers sufficient funds to complete the sale, and the buyer signs all the lender's documents after providing all the financial and property information like inspection reports, appraisals. They show evidence that the property is insured because that property is to serve as collateral for the loan. Okay. So now this is what we highlight in the book pertaining to that. Oh my God, this looks like a mess. What's with the arrows and the drawn lines? Because it's all out of order here. So a deed is delivered in exchange for the purchase price. So, okay, so basically it would be like this. You'd probably get a question like this. In many sales transactions, two closings actually take place. The closing of the buyer's loan and the closing of the sale, where the deed is delivered in exchange for the purchase price. You don't need to do all these arrows and highlights up here if you just write that after the words closing of the sale, where the deed is delivered in exchange for the purchase price.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's on page 386, right?
386. Where are you? Yes.
86.
I'm going to see if I could have them put the words in a different order here so that we could have it something that we could highlight easier in our notes in the future.
Yeah.
Where the deed is delivered in exchange for the purchase price.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Right.
Okay, so the lender has a lot of interest at the closing as well. They want to make sure the buyer obtained homeowner's insurance to make sure that their collateral is insured. They're going to want a copy of the certificate of occupancy if your municipality requires one, as well as the fire inspection certificates, showing that you passed the all requirements of having smoke alarms and fire alarms and carbon monoxide detectors and fire extinguisher requirements if required by that municipality. You're going to want, at minimum, a wood destroying insect report if you don't get a home inspection. They want to make sure the house is not being eaten, the structure is not being eaten up by wood destroying insects. And they want to see if the property's in a flood zone or not, but the lender will do the search on their own to find that out. If it's in a 100-year flood zone, flood insurance is mandatory. Otherwise, you're not going to get the loan. If it's in a 500-year flood zone, it is not mandatory, but you should really still think about getting it, you know. So what is a 100-year or 500-year flood zone? Well, a 100-year flood zone means that the property is going to flood at least once every 100 years. 500-year flood zone, it's going to flood at least once every 500 years. But the odds are less likely for flooding in 500-year flood zones than they are in 100-year flood zones. That's all. Now, if you want to dispute the flood zone determination so you don't have to carry flood insurance, you need to get what's called an elevation study from a surveyor. We could actually buy them right through the All Jersey MLS. They have a flood map certification that you could get from myfloodstatus.com. And then you got this link here, /real-estate-flood-determinations. And you could order these. So let me click on that. And they have the flood report order for $30. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, I see when the property is leased in Realtor.com, they disclose the property is in the flood area. They are disclosed.
Yeah, but how good are their flood maps and the information that they're using there? You know, that's the question.
Oh.
Oh, look at this. They got a bunch of flyers here. You could use this. They show you how to read the flood certificate that you actually get. Oh, that's nice. How to challenge your flood status in 3 simple steps. Basically, if any corner of the property is showing having water on it, it's in a flood zone. Let's see what they put here. Yeah. Whatever. I don't want to get into all that now. But look at this. They have these, you can order these for $30. Or if the buyer wants a flood status determination, you could tell them I could order you a report. It'll cost $30. And then they could dispute it with their lender. They're requiring to carry it. Okay. Or we got the FEMA flood zone map search that you could look at, but that's not going to be a final determination. You cannot dispute flood insurance over that. That you could just do an advanced search yourself to see if a property's in a flood zone, or you could use the tools available on NAR RPR, which are included free as well, in your RPR tool once you become members of the New Jersey Realtors Association. Remember the one up top here, this is that flood map search on FEMA's website. FEMA Flood Map Search Center. You could plug in the address of your property and see if it's in a flood zone.
Oh,
You want to see if your property's in a flood zone, you just plug it in there. Okay, so here, let me, I'll share that link with you.
I just put the zip code number. Zip code.
Well, zip code will just bring up the whole zip code of your place. Yeah, but well,
Okay.
here you can also put up here's an old property I used to own. I know it's in a flood zone now, but it wasn't back then. But here, I'm gonna put a search in here. Okay, can you see it? Yes. So I just searched up this old address for a property I used to own.
Mm-hmm.
And here you can see there's a pin on the map where it's located.
Right.
And it uses the ESRI data and data overlays for the mapping. You know, there's a legend here that shows you what the different things mean. But basically, if it's in any of these blue areas here, you're in a flood zone. If it's any of these brown areas, what looks to appear to be brown, you're still in a flood zone. You're just on the outer skirts of it. Okay. So here, let's zoom in. on this property. Boom, boom. You
Hmm.
can see the satellite overlay. So this is the house I used to have here. It was on that double lot. You got the garage and there's a shed over here. You can't see it because of that, but it's more than half in the definite flood zone, and this outer edge of the flood zone, the other half, right? But during what's it, Katrina? Katrina was after Sandy, right? Yeah, when Katrina hit, it
Yeah.
had storm surge. So this is the stop sign up the street. You know how tall stop signs are, right? The top of the stop sign, about 3 inches of it was sticking out of the water. That's how high the water got around this area. So all these homes were flooded out.
If I put the address, what is the red color? Red is a flood zone. Red sign.
Well, no, you put the address in and it pulls up this map like this.
Right. And what is the red sign?
What is what? I'm sorry?
The red sign. The red sign.
The website?
No, red color.
Oh, that's the pin. That's just a pin showing where the property location is.
Okay.
You see the pin?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's that red pin. That just shows you where the property is. Now, if it's not showing that the property's in the flood zone, but yet you see up here, there's revisions and amendments, you really need to go into them and read them, because it could be that the maps were redrawn, but it's just not showing on the maps yet, the overlay. Okay, so sometimes that occurs. This map is showing now, but I remember when they first did those revisions and the amendments, it was not showing there. That this
Okay.
property was not included. But if you read it, you saw that they were going to be, modifying the map. So you really got to look over all that data. Okay. So that's the information for, flood maps and certifications. All right, so RESPA, we learned, is the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. It was formerly administered by HUD, and today it is administered by that new agency, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB. It was created to ensure that buyers and sellers in residential real estate transactions have knowledge of all the settlement costs down to the penny. So if somebody is getting paid from the closing funds, it has to be disclosed on the closing disclosure, formerly called the HUD one, that RESPA settlement statement, now called the CD. So we already went over what kinds of properties that applies to in earlier chapters, but here they show you that RESPA requirements apply when you purchase is financed by federally related mortgage loan. Federally related loans are those that are made by banks or other lenders whose money is insured by the FDIC or FSLIC or the these federal agencies. Or they're insured by the FHA or guaranteed by the VA. Loans that are made by the Rec D, the money is coming from the USDA. They're administered by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, or they're intended to be sold by the lender to Fannie Mae, Ginnie Mae, or Freddie Mac. You don't need to study all this for exams, though. Okay, but you do need to know what is the purpose of the RESPA statement? It's to ensure that all parties have knowledge of all the settlement costs. So, turn to page 388. So, this is on top of page 388 there. RESPA is the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, formerly administered by HUD, now administered by the CFPB. The RESPA settlement statement is now called the CD, the closing disclosure, and it was created to ensure the buyers and sellers on residential transactions have knowledge of all settlement costs. It's required on any federally related new first mortgage loan to buy real estate. It's not required for refinancing, reverse mortgages, commercial loans, investment properties, cash purchases, or loans secured by movable dwellings. So we should add that in there.
Kickback.
Cash purchases or movable dwellings. And RESPA Section 8. This is not Section 8 like Section 8 housing vouchers as the rental subsidies. This is Section 8 of RESPA settlement procedure law.
Oh, okay.
Kickbacks illegal. These are unearned fees paid to anyone who didn't take an active role in the transaction. Like giving a friend some money in exchange for a valuable lead. Or if we were to get a payoff from an insurance company for selling homeowners insurance policy or a home warranty. See, Section 9, a borrower can use any title insurance company. The lender can't dictate that you need to use theirs. And RESPA Section 10 requires lenders to limit the amounts kept in the escrow accounts for the coming year's expenses for taxes and insurance. And they need to do accounting periodically through the year and return excesses over $50 above the tolerances. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do these highlights on top of page 388. RESPA Section 8 prohibits against kickbacks. And Section 10, lenders are not required to maintain escrow accounts to fund property taxes and insurance. However, if they do, RESPA limits the amount in the reserves, and lenders at least once a year have to do accounting and return overages more than $50. Which they may have collected.
Okay.
Oh, got it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so the CFPB, that's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and they merged some old forms and they created some new ones. TRID is they combined a couple of laws and forms. So TRID stands for the reason I drink. No, you guys are not even catching on to that, so are you really paying attention? You should be laughing right now. TRID stands for
Sorry
the
about that.
drink. That's what I said. The reason I drink. No, but not funny. Okay. So TRID is the TILA RESPA integrated disclosure, and it applies to most federally related first and second mortgages. And when they passed this law, it was the reason I drank.
Reason I drink.
Let's actually the real estate commission. Somebody from the real estate commission told me that joke, but it wasn't a
The
joke.
reason I drink. Okay.
At a seminar, they're like, "Yeah, oh my God, President Obama passed this, created this CFPB, this Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They were supposed to simplify these forms that gave more information to the consumer, but made it simplified the form and made them easier and quicker to do so that the transaction streamlined. But it had the opposite effect. It takes longer to fill them out. It's more involved. So the one lady at the real estate commission that was giving the presentation, she was like, TRID is the reason I drink. So that's right. The real told me that one. Okay, so TILA RESPA integrated disclosure, that's page 388. The first time we've seen it. We've seen it in the previous mortgage chapters too. But so TRID requirements apply to most federally related first and second mortgages used to buy real estate. They do not apply to home equity lines of credit, mortgages secured by movable dwellings. Which I just realized I did Did I misspell that again?
Which one?
Oh, no. I thought I wrote movable somewhere with an E in it.
Oh,
Thought I misspelled it again. But maybe I did in my notes over here.
I'm gonna write it down next to treat the reason I doing that way remembered.
Yeah, that just means it's a pain in the neck. And reverse mortgages, cash transactions, and loans for commercial properties. It does not apply to them. So therefore, you do not need to use any of those CD or LE. You're allowed to still use the old RESPA settlement statements, which were easier to fill out for any of these transactions. Excuse me. So the settlement statement used to be called the HUD-1 and the good faith estimate and the truth in lending disclosure. But they've been replaced now by the CD, the closing disclosure, the loan estimate, and TILA, or TRID. Okay.
Tila Rispa.
Under TRID rules, the lender is required to provide the 5-page closing disclosure at least 3 business days before the closing, with a minimum of 7 business days between the time of the issuance of the LE and the closing occurring. We had previous chapters, I think it was chapter 13 or 14, where we went over that, what the old document was called and what the new document's called and the time frame in which you need to give them. So the loan estimate, along with the booklet, Your Home Loan Toolkit, that advises the consumer how to shop for loans, needs to be put in the mail within 3 days of the completed loan application. When is a loan application considered complete?
7 days.
When they provide all the information from aliens. Yes,
Alien.
aliens. There you go.
Oh,
And then, even if a loan estimate needs to be reissued, because under certain circumstances it does, there's going to be an extended 3-day waiting period of 3 days before the closing can occur. But there also has to be a minimum of 7 days between the time the closing occurs, 7 business days between the time the issuance of the LE and the closing occurring. So here's what is this, like the 3rd page from the LE? No, 2nd page from the CD. On page 390 is where you can find this. These are the 2 important lines we need to worry ourselves about. Under section H, make sure those numbers are right. Those are our commissions to our brokerage before our split with our broker. Okay, so you got to make sure that the one that's got your agency name on there is right. Only worry about that one. You want to get paid, right? Make sure you get paid the right amount. And look, well in advance of the closing occurring, we should supply a commission bill to the attorneys or the closing agents to ensure that they know how much we're supposed to be getting paid.
yeah.
So when the borrower receives the CD, they should compare the first 3 pages of the CD to the loan estimate that they received shortly after signing their intent to proceed. And there should be no changes, or those changes have to be within certain tolerances. I'm not sure what those tolerances are, but if they exceed those tolerances, then the lender needs to eat those costs. And here's basic highlights of the CD, the closing disclosure. We're not going to go over all of them in depth, but here we'll highlight here the highlights of it, and you can go over them later if you like. You know, that goes over the cost to close. Closing costs are itemized. A brief analysis of whether the items have changed or not. Some more disclosures, and the last page is a summary. All right, now what we got coming up, we're going to talk about the second search of the public records. That's usually done at the moment of closing, just to make sure no one new liens or encumbrances popped up that didn't come up in the initial title search. The seller executes and signs an affidavit of title. We're going to go over what that is and what that does. The inspection of the premises, the final walkthrough occurs. We want to make sure that the attorneys ensured that any existing liens on the property from the previous owner's lenders are released so that when we buy the property and we close on the sale for the new buyer, that there's no liens on the property. And prorations, the final financial adjustments at closing, that's that final last math problem that we're going to do. And then we'll be done with this chapter. Okay. So without further ado, let's get into these things. Here we go. Let's talk about affidavit of title. So usually a buyer does a title search, right? Their attorney will probably be the one that orders the title search and survey. And the title search is often done days, if not weeks, before the actual closing. So they can review the information, make sure there's no other liens on the property that the seller didn't disclose and all. It gives us plenty of time to try to clear these things up. Okay, and a title insurance is going to be issued. But what about the time between the time the title search gets done and the time the closing occurs? What about that gap of time? There's possibility that other things happened.
Yeah.
So that's why the seller is required to execute, that means to sign, an affidavit of title. It's a sworn statement in which the seller assures the title company and the buyer that since the date of the title examination, there's been no judgments, bankruptcies, or divorces involving the seller, no repairs or improvements that have not been paid for, and that they are in possession of the premises. Make sure there's no squatters or renters or anybody in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
This affidavit of title, the company obtains the right to sue the seller if their statements in the affidavit prove incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's signed by the seller. Because the buyer purchased this title insurance, they did the title search, but what about that gap in time? Something could have popped up. Some work could have been done. You know, we need to make sure that the seller signs this affidavit. This way, the title insurance company can sue them if they lied in their sworn statement.
Makes sense.
Okay, everybody got those notes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
I got the same information written on my own slide here, once again, like I've been doing, you know. So we repeat this information a little bit. The affidavit of title, the title insurance company has the seller sign at the moment of closing. It verifies they have not encumbered the property since the title search was done, swearing they have no judgments, no unpaid contractors for repairs or improvements, they didn't file for bankruptcy or divorce, and the seller's in possession of the premises. And by doing so, the title company obtains the right to sue the seller if they lied or
Any of it's untrue.
after the conditions are met, the closing agent or title company disperses the purchase price to the seller. The seller gives the keys and the original CO and fire inspection certificates to the buyer, along with the deed to the property. Then the deed gets recorded. The seller records and pays for recording costs, showing they're no longer the owner and they've cleared up and paid off all the liens. And the buyer records all and pays for the recording of the deed in their name and the mortgage as required by their lender to secure the first lien position. So that's what goes down in those final moments of the closing there. All right.
yeah.
So we check the premises at various times during the search of searching for real estate, right? Let me see if I got a slide about this or not. No. Okay. Okay, so we check the premises, okay? We check the premises a lot of times. When we go to get a listing initially, we go to the house, right? We walk around the house, we look, check out the house, how many rooms, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms. We look at all the details, we take the notes so that we can put the listing in, right? That's checking the premises. Then when we got buyers that come and they look at the property, they check out the premises. Then they get home inspections. That's another checking of the premises. We get an appraisal done. The appraiser comes in and checks out the premises, right? After the home inspection, if work needed to be done, we go back and we check the premises again with the home inspector to make sure that all the work was done satisfactorily. Don't forget that process right there. A lot of agents forget that step. They just wait till the closing then and they're like, oh shit, I hope everything got done right. I hope they did everything. And often you may find that they did not. They didn't even do anything. So now the buyer's in a tight spot. Do I close today or we delay the closing because they didn't do the work? So it's important to make sure that we follow up on that inspection. You make sure that if you negotiated anything during attorney review after the home inspection, you got to make sure that the seller did the work that was required of them, that they agreed to, and have them report to their agent and have their agent report to us so that we could arrange the home inspector to go back in again and look at it. And then we do the final walkthrough of the property too. That's an inspection of the property. Well, actually, even in between there, you get a survey done. That's an inspection of the property, right? And then we do the final walkthrough shortly before closing. Now, when did I suggest that you do it? I suggested that you guys do it on the way to closing, the day of closing, no matter how inconvenient it may be, because I told you guys a story about where I did it the day before, the evening before the closing, and they still stripped out the kitchen. You know, so if that's the case, and then the buyer goes to the closing, they buy it, they go home to see their beautiful new house, and then the kitchen is gone, you know, they're calling the police and filing a police report, you know, that they've been robbed and an insurance claim on their first day of owning the house, and that would suck. So make sure you do that final walkthrough on the way to closing. So it's an inconvenience, but it's worth it. So the buyer should make that last-minute inspection before the closing to check that the house remains in the condition originally presented and that the seller is leaving behind any appliances or other property that they said that they were going to, and they didn't take it, weren't supposed to, and they cleaned up all the garbage and didn't leave any old broken furniture and piles of crap behind. You know, that they leave it in broom clean condition. That doesn't mean they need to scrub the house. It just means that they're not leaving piles of garbage behind, okay? They don't need to go sweeping up. That's not what broom clean condition means. They don't need to scrub anything. They just need to, we do the final walkthrough to make sure they removed all their belongings and they left behind what they were supposed to. There's no piles of garbage behind, and when they were moving their crap out, they didn't leave any gouges in the floors or holes in the walls, things of that nature. So now we need to make sure that any existing liens were released by the previous owner's attorney is responsible for making sure that their liens are released for the existing liens that are on the property before the buyer signs the paperwork to take the ownership. So
what is this means? Releasing existing liens? That whatever
that they are paid off, and they got to make sure that they're released, that there was a satisfaction of lien filed in the public records. Now, the lender may not have been paid just yet, but the closing agent's telling them, hey, we're doing the closing right now. We need you to release the lien from the property because the buyer is not going to sign the paperwork unless the liens are released.
right.
They're not take on the ownership. But they got the money right here. We're in possession of the money. We're going to transfer it to you in a matter of minutes, but you need to release those liens first.
You need to release. So,
Now, they give another example here, though. They say when the buyer is assuming a seller's existing mortgage loan, if they're just taking over the loan, the buyer wants to know the exact balance of the loan as of the closing date. In some areas, this is customary for the buyer to obtain a mortgage reduction certificate. Remember, that's from the lender showing how much remains on the mortgage debt. Sometimes inaccurately referred to as an estoppel certificate. Yeah, because it's coming from the lender. When it comes from the lender, it's a mortgage reduction certificate. When it's signed by the buyer, it's an estoppel. Okay. Anyway, closing in escrow is when the closing is done and the seller and the buyer are not sitting across from each other at the table. You know, the seller may have come hours or days before, dropped off the keys to the house, the inspection certificates, and signed whatever documents they needed to transfer the ownership. And then the buyer would then come later on, and they would fill out all their mortgage documents. They would come with their deposit checks that your brokerage is holding. Remember, they gave you a deposit. Make sure you get that from your broker before you go to the closing and take it with you, made out to the closing agent. Okay. And then, so it's important. Our job as real estate agents, make sure our client shows up to the closing on time with their ID, their valid IDs. You cannot close unless you have your valid IDs. Should be a photo ID, but I'm not sure if that's mandatory or required, but you got to have a valid ID at closing. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to complete the purchase. And we need to get the deposit checks that our brokers are holding in their escrow account. So we need to get that made out to whoever the closing agent is, which we need to find out who to make it out to, and make sure that's ready for the closing. And so we make sure the buyers show up on time with their IDs. We bring their money and make sure that the buyers also show up with any additional money that they needed for the closing. And then the agent disperses the price to the seller. They give the keys, the original fire and CO certificates to the buyer along with the deed. And they record the deed and the mortgage. And then they record the satisfaction of mortgage documents for the seller.
so the escrow closing, can you go back, please?
Yep. Closing and escrow. Everybody's just not sitting across from each other at the table. The closing is done by a neutral third party, whoever the closing agent is, whether it's an attorney or a title company. They don't give the keys to the house to the buyer until the buyer's given all the money and everything that's required. Okay. That's the closing agent's job, to make sure everybody brought what they were supposed to, and then they could do the handoff.
I see.
Everybody doesn't need to be sitting across from each other at the desk. Okay. So these are becoming popular, but still the traditional closings are still pretty popular, where everybody comes to the closing table, the sellers, the buyers, they sit across from each other, they're agents, and they bring all the paperwork, the keys, and all that stuff.
Mhm.
The inspection certificates and the monies. In preparing the closing statements, the broker's commission is usually paid by the seller, but not always as of that NAR lawsuit judgment. The buyer may be responsible for paying their own agent's commissions now. Attorney's fees, each side pays their own. The recording expenses, each side pays their own. The realty transfer fee is a tax that's always paid by the seller. The seller always pays the realty transfer fee. That's the sales tax.
Mm.
Even though you go to a store, you buy clothing, it's the buyer who pays the sales tax. When it comes to real estate, it's actually the seller who pays the sales tax.
Oh,
So there's also a mansion tax that the that the buyer has to pay if the sale price is over $1 million. There's a 1% of the sale price if the value is 1 million or more. But I put a note here. Note, New Jersey Governor Murphy recently changed this. Like I'm talking about in the last couple of months. The buyer is no longer responsible for this payment. It was shifted to the seller. So now, if a seller is selling a house, they have to pay the realty transfer tax. And on top of that, they need to pay this mansion tax.
1%.
And it's no longer 1%. It's up to 3.5%,
Oh, wow.
depending on the value of the property being sold.
Hmm.
What is the governor doing with all this money?
Uh,
It's just
eating ice cream.
to stick their grubby little fingers in your pocket and get more money from you. That's all it is. Do you know that when Governor Christie was still governor, he went to all the politicians in New Jersey and he said, listen, guys, I couldn't tell you what this mansion, what the realty transfer tax is being used for anymore. It was originally established to create a central hall of record keeping for all the ownership documents to track anytime there's a transfer of ownership. And we got 21 halls of records already created in New Jersey, and they're already funded and maintained by the recording fees. Why are we charging a realty transfer tax? Where does that money go? I couldn't even tell you where it goes. He said it goes to a general fund, and then how is that money being spent? It disappears. So he said, you guys, you write down a law, create a law doing away with the realty transfer tax. I will sign it that day it comes across my desk. Once again, nobody signed this law. Nobody created this law. Why? Because our politicians love your money. They love having their fingers in your pockets. Right? So, this mansion tax, by the way, how did that come about? Politicians are cowards in this state. They're cowards. Instead of saying, hey, we're going to create a new tax that's going to put a tax on buyers that when they purchase a house and it's worth $1 million, when they purchase a property that's $1 million or more, they need to pay 1% tax. They were cowards. So instead, what they did is they called it the mansion tax. And you know, whenever you go for the elections to vote, there's these public option questions on the side. You know, they ask you about local issues. Well,
Yeah.
they put a question on the ballot. They called it the mansion tax, and they want the public to either approve or deny it. So instead of them taking the heat for creating the tax, they put it on the burden on the public, and they worded it in a way. You know how politicians are so divisive. They're like, it's this side. You need to hate the rich because they got all that money. You need to envy them. You know, envy is a sin. But you need to envy them. So we need to hate the rich, so they need to pay their fair share. You know how politicians are always yelling like this, trying to get us, they're trying to divide us all the time. If we stuck together as people, our nation would be so much stronger. But instead, we listen to these idiotic politicians because they're more like our football teams that we follow. We got a football team that we follow, even if they're doing a crappy job, or they're like, I'm still with my team. Unfortunately, that's how they treat politicians, because they're Democrat or they're Republican. We got to stick with them no matter what, even though they're awful. So that ends up hurting us in the long run. And that's exactly what happened here. So they put a public option question on the ballot, and the way that it was worded was they called it the mansion tax. That any time that somebody buys a property that's $1 million or more, they need to pay a 1% additional sales tax. And of course, most people, they're like, mansion tax? Yeah, I'm never going to own a mansion in my time. Yeah, F them. Let them pay their fair share. And people voted it overwhelmingly into law. The people created a new tax.
Mm.
Now, let me ask you a question. The mansion tax said any property valued $1 million or more. It could be raw land with no structure on it. Let me ask you a question. When a developer buys a property, a large piece of land where they're going to build townhouses or condos or whatever, you think they paid probably over $1 million for that large piece of property? Most likely.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're going to have to pay that million. They're going to have to pay that 1% tax.
Mm.
Do you think the developer is going to eat that tax, or do you think they're going to pass it on to the consumer into the sales price of each affordable housing or each individual condo or townhouse unit? They're just going to include it in the price, and it's going to drive the price of housing up. And we wonder why the price of housing goes up. Okay? Because politicians are cowards. They passed it on to you. You hate the rich, so you voted to allow them to raise this tax and create a tax. And now they raise that. And then the developer's like, okay, we got to pay it because it's a law now, but we're not going to eat that loss. We're going to pass it on to the consumer. And so it drives up the price in the end. So when you tried sticking it to the man, who'd you really stick it to?
Mm.
Right? So if you voted that way for that tax when it came up, this was quite a few years back already. But now we're going to get into, I made the slide and I adjusted the slide that goes over Governor Murphy's recent changes that the buyer is no longer responsible for this payment, but it was shifted now to the seller. So title insurance is paid by the buyer. Living fees are paid by the buyer. Tax reserves and insurance reserves for the coming year's payments are paid by the buyer. Additional mortgage-related fees paid by the buyer, although they could negotiate some for the seller to pay. The appraisal fees paid by the buyer, survey fees paid by the buyer, and prorations. Well, it depends who paid for it. Will get a credit for it. So prorations are debits and credits. And what I could add to that slide paid by okay, I'll say credits are given to whoever paid for it, whatever it may be. There you go. Where is that?
Preparation.
Paid for it, whatever it may be. Don't worry, I'll clarify that. So, how the closing works. This is an older screenshot, but it has a better explanation here. Okay, so apparently they made a change in the book on page 396. So a debit is a charge, an amount that the party being debited owes and must pay at the closing. A credit is an amount entered in the person's favor, either an amount the party already paid, an amount that the party must be, or an amount the party must be reimbursed for. So what I have you write here in the book is who gets a credit. You don't have the written here to write it because they put one long paragraph here. You'd have to write this in the margin. You should write this question next to that. Who gets a credit? And then the answer should be whoever paid for it, whatever it may be. All right? Everybody got that?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's have a slide just on this in a moment. Well, actually, this may even be it. Let me see. Prorations. Prorations are the final adjustments at the closing for the finances. You know, the expenses are fairly divided between the seller and the buyer. Accrued items are credited to the buyer, prepaid items are credited to whomever paid them.
Proration, right? Proration, right?
Prorations.
Proration.
Correction.
Prorations
Yeah, proration. Got it.
are the final financial adjustments at closing. Expenses are fairly divided between the seller and the buyer. Accrued items credited to the buyer, prepaid items are credited to whoever paid them. A credit is an amount entered in one's favor, and a debit is a charge, an amount one owes. Arrears, where's your rear? Your rear end, behind, it's often referred to as, right? Arrears are at the end of a period for which a payment is due, the opposite of an advance. It's kind of like when we talked about rent. If a landlord doesn't specify in a lease that the rent is due in advance at the beginning of the month, New Jersey law, it's due in the arrears at the
End
end,
of the, at the end of the.
rather beginning. So arrears is at the end of a period for which a payment is due, the opposite of paying in advance. Now, whatever is a credit to one side is usually a debit to the other. Not always, but usually. So who gets a credit at closing? Whoever paid for it, whatever it may be. The remaining heating oil in the tank. Well, who paid for the oil to fill that tank? The seller, so the seller gets a credit. So we should get a measurement if you're the listing agent anyway, not if you're the buyer's agent. If you're the listing agent, you should arrange to get the oil company to come and do a reading before the closing to find out how many gallons of oil are left in that tank. And then on the day of closing, whatever the cost of the heating oil is, that's the amount the buyer needs to reimburse the seller for the remaining oil that's in the tank. The escrow deposit is the deposit money the buyer put down. Well, the buyer will get a credit for that towards their closing costs. Even though the seller's getting the money, the buyer is going to get a credit for that amount towards their closing costs. See, this is why I do not want you to examine and overanalyze who gets the money. When they give you a question on exam and it asks you who gets a credit at closing for this or that, I don't want you overthinking it. You should
Right.
ask yourself this question, which I created this purposefully, this dumbed down, simple question so that you get the answer right. Anytime you get a question that asks who gets a credit, your next question in your own head should be, well, who paid for it? Because whoever paid for it, that's the one who gets the credit.
Buyer.
That's why I said, who gets a credit at closing? Whoever paid for it, whatever it may be. If it's for the remaining heating oil tank, well, the seller paid for that, so the seller gets a credit. If it's for the escrow deposits, well, the buyer put down the deposit, so the buyer gets a credit. Don't start overanalyzing. Well, the seller's actually getting the money, so doesn't the seller get the credit? No, the buyer gets a credit against the purchase price for the deposit money that they made. Okay.
Mhm.
Prepaid taxes, because the seller pays the taxes quarterly. They pay for the quarter in advance, and they're not going to be living there for the full entire quarter. So we're going to have to do some prorations of the taxes, and the seller's going to have to get a credit for any taxes that they paid in advance that they're not going to be living there anymore.
Mhm.
But delinquent taxes, well, the buyer is going to need to pay them because they're going to pay for, so the buyer will get a credit. because the buyer was not living there in that period of time, but yet they're going to pay for those taxes so that we could do the settlement. Well, then the buyer's going to need to get a credit for it. And then there's credits for a lot of other things. Now, the only time it really doesn't apply about who paid for it gets the credit is with like tenant's rent. Okay, because neither the seller or the buyer paid the tenant's rent. They're just going to get a credit for it based on when the closing date takes place. If the closing is taking place in the middle of the month and the tenants pay the rent at the beginning of the month, the seller doesn't get to keep the full month's rent. They only get to keep that half a month's rent. So we're going to need to prorate the rents to the actual number of days of the month. You take the rental figure, divide it by the number of days in the month, and however many days are left, that's what the buyer gets paid a credit for. And so on and so on. Okay?
Mm.
So, recording expenses. The seller usually pays for recording charges, the filing fees that are necessary to clear up all the defects and furnish the purchaser with good, clear title. The purchaser pays for recording charges incident with the actual transfer of title into their name. That's on page 397. That's at the top of the page under recording expenses. Then we have the realty transfer fee I told you about, the RTF for short. The realty transfer fee is always paid to the seller. It's a tax they must pay. The mansion tax is paid for by the seller as of 7/10/2025. If the value of the property is $1 million or more, no matter if it's vacant, unimproved, or developed land. So the tax is 1% to 3.5%, depending on the purchase price. And I'm going to have a breakdown for that on the next slide because of Governor Murphy's latest change here. But let's highlight this. The realty transfer fee is always charged to the seller in a real estate transaction. Who pays that transfer fee? It's a tax, but they call it a transfer fee. Who pays it? Seller always.
Transfer fee. Always.
I know this is an older screenshot, right?
Mhm. So Manson tax, it just they just started from July.
No, mansion tax has been charged for years.
So why they over here 7/10/25 seller paid by the seller as of 7/10/25 if the value of property 1 million or more.
So when this public option question to create a mansion tax in the state of New Jersey, they also gave the authorization to the politicians to raise it or change it in any way they like after it's created.
Mhm.
See, the politicians are cowards. They put it on the ballot to be voted for, and they wrote it in a very obscure way. They just said mansion tax. They called it the mansion tax. That's indicating like it's rich for rich people.
Right, rich people.
People pay, you know. And so they create this rift in society. It's got to be different people against different people. We got to create classes of people, whether it's by wealth or by race or by whatever. We have to create different classes of people so that we could keep them fighting amongst each other. Because if they fight amongst each other, they're not going to see what we're doing. They're not going to pay attention to us, the politicians, and that's what they do. And so they created this mansion tax, and they said it's if anybody buys a property $1 million or more, you got to pay 1% because that's what it used to be. But recently, Governor Murphy in July, Governor Murphy, he waved this magic wand, his pen. He waved this magic wand and said, the sellers are responsible for paying it now, not the buyers. And we're going to raise that tax. we're not gonna have it as $1 million for all properties above $1 million. We're gonna say that it's gonna be $1 million for properties up to $1 million and up to 2 million. And from 2 million and up, they're gonna pay 2%. And from 3 million and up, they're gonna pay 3%. And for 3.5 million and more, they're gonna pay 3.5%.
3.5.
Just because he wants to raise more money. That's like the fake thing that politicians come up with. You know, they come up with these tax breaks, right, for seniors, right?
Mm.
They do the senior tax freeze and homestead rebates and all this. Listen, if they really wanted to give you a tax break, they wouldn't have charged you the money. Why did they take the money from you just to give it back later? It's a scam. You know, they don't want, they're showing you here, they're going to take the money from you here, they tell you they're going to give it to you here, but yet they're screwing you over here, and you don't see what they're doing. All right. This is a perfect example. Actually, I was watching, did anybody watch the governor debate the other day? I didn't watch it, but I'm seeing clips of it online now, little clips of it, and I find it very interesting. I got to sit down and watch the whole thing, but it's between what's that Mickey Sherrill and Jack Ciattarelli, and you know, they all claim that they won the debate. You know, each one claims that they won the debate and everything, but you know, the Jack Ciattarelli, in my opinion, I think he won it hands down. And not just because I'm a Republican, you know, but because I think that he did, because he gave details on stuff and he gave real answers. Whereas she's making things up out of thin air, like that one thing where she said that he wants to raise our taxes by 10%, which is actually a false statement. She took a video clip from something he said 10 years ago, or was it 10 or 20 years ago? And then she put it on a loop as if he said it today, that he's going to raise taxes by 10%. Now, he brought up a very good thing. He's like, you know, they just passed into law here in New Jersey the Stay in New Jersey law, right? That'll cut seniors' taxes in half, or they get a rebate for up to a certain dollar amount. You know, if you really wanted to give a discount, or you wanted seniors to stay here and make it more affordable, instead of saying the Stay in New Jersey rebate bullshit, where the senior citizen has to pay the higher tax, and then later on we may give it back to you if we have the money in our budget, and if we don't, we'll give you a tax credit for the coming year. So instead of doing that, why don't you just not charge the senior any tax?
Because they need to charge the money. So they have the money, so they use the money for a period of time and then give it back. But they need the money.
Maybe some interest on your money? Like putting
No, they don't pay interest, but they have the money.
What are you taking your tax dollars and putting it in an interest-bearing investment? And so while they're holding it in that term, they're making money off of your money, and then they give you a rebate back for it. That's not the purpose of government. Government should not be doing that. Whatever happened to, if we read where's my pocket? Oh, I got it downstairs. I got a pocket constitution. You guys get one of those pocket constitutions. You may be able to go to your local library, get them for free, or city hall. Now, what is the part there with no taxation without representation? Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
No taxation without representation. So in other words, you cannot tax me unless I'm seeing some kind of a benefit to that tax.
Yeah.
But yet politicians are coming up with these taxes all the time, and we see no benefit to them whatsoever. So how are they getting away with it? You're letting them.
Yeah.
Now, you're voting for them to go back in office next time again. Even though they just screwed you, you're voting for them again, you're putting them in a position to screw you again. Pardon my language here, but you know, that's essentially what's going on. You know, if they really wanted to tax a senior, they would simply not tax a senior. They wouldn't say, okay, well, you got to pay the higher tax when you do a senior freeze, and then you get a rebate for the difference from whenever you froze your taxes into what they are. How about if you're going to freeze my taxes at this amount, I only pay that amount in taxes? And with the state of New Jersey, where you could get a rebate of up to half of it, how about you just not charge me that full tax? You know, where in the debate, Jack Ciattarelli suggested that once you become 70 years of age, you should not be paying any income or property taxes once you reach 70 years of age. I like the idea of that. I'm not anywhere near 70 yet. I'm 54 years old right now, you know, but I think that would be great. My mother could benefit from that, definitely. You know, look at the property taxes that these seniors are paying. They should be getting some sort of a tangible benefit. They've been helping this state grow all these years, and they're still, you know, mistreating our seniors.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, this is the rule now. You guys have got.
Yep.
Okay. This is not in the book, so you may want to snap a picture of it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm going to make a notation of this here. This is 397. This is a big change we need to make.
They spend a lot of money right now and to do advertisement for.
You do what?
They spend a lot of money to do advertisement for the Democrat Party.
Look, New Jersey is a state. We've got so much red tape and regulation. Like they would never allow DOJ to come in and do accounting looking for waste, fraud, and abuse in this state. You know, we should have our own version of DOJ here in New Jersey that sifts through all the laws and bills and tax collections and money that's collected and where it's actually going. You know,
Yeah.
I had my windshield cracked on the Parkway. You know, driving past the construction site. They're jackhammering and a rock flew, and I was in the fast lane and it smashed my windshield. Okay. I filed with the Parkway for reimbursement of my my insurance deductible to get reimbursed for the difference. And I filed the claim. My claim is approved, and I didn't get the money. And I'm waiting and waiting. So months and months later, I contact them again. I'm saying, hey, what's up with my, you said I was approved. What's up with my rebate here? My reimbursement. And they said it was paid out. I said, paid out? To who? Yeah, it ain't pay out. Oh, we paid it to Allstate Insurance. Why? I was like, I don't even have Allstate Insurance. Why would they pay any money to, first of all, why would they pay any money to any insurance company, let alone Allstate, which isn't my insurance company? So why would they pay why would they pay that money to Allstate? It should be paid to me. It was supposed to be for the difference of my my deductible. You know, I'm not asking you to pay for the whole insurance. I got insurance. You know, I want you to pay the deductible. So then they got, okay, well, we'll see who's in charge of that. So okay, it's this insurance company, that insurance company. They've been throwing me around. And this happened in 2001, and I'm still trying to get reimbursed.
Oh my God.
And so I did a follow-up again the other day, and they sent me an email. Some other lady I never heard of sent me an email. Apparently she works for the insurance company for the contractor. And on the form, the claim form, it asks names of witnesses and their names of phone numbers, phone numbers, and address of witnesses. While I was driving 55, 60 miles an hour on the Parkway, and I'm supposed to know that. And I said, I do not know. So she highlighted that section and said, denied, claim denied.
Oh.
And then I responded, I'm like, how are you going to deny my claim because I don't know the names of the people who are in the area or who did the damage or driving cars nearby? I'm like, are you kidding me? So I'm still disputing that. This happened the other day. I'm still disputing this now. And it looks like if they don't, and I asked them, where do I go from here to file this claim to dispute this because this is ridiculous. And so she still hasn't replied to me. My next step is to take them to court. I got to sue them now in small claims court to try to get my money here, which is this is ridiculous, you know. But this is the state of New Jersey and how well they manage money. You know, just another example of it. Do you know that 1 mile of construction of road in New Jersey is like 10 times the cost of other states? Why? You guys ever see construction sites where you got 10 guys standing around and one guy's in the ditch digging the hole, doing work in the hole?
Yeah.
He's got like 10 supervisors around him.
Yeah, I
there's
see
a
that.
lot of people, around,
Yeah.
and only one guy working.
Because we got all these regulations in New Jersey that you need a supervisor for this to make sure this is done right, that's done right, that's done right. In the meantime, one guy's doing the job and you got 10 supervisors over him, you know?
That's
Yeah.
true.
But
I
there's
see.
a saying out there, what do you call it? What's it? I forget how the saying goes. Yeah, you got you can't have more chiefs than Indians in the tribe. Yeah.
Yeah.
They all work right, you know. And that's basically how our government's running. We got more chiefs than Indians doing the work, you know. But let me put here.
Wow. Mhm.
And mansion tax. It's page 397.
98.
And okay. And then I got slide number 37 and 38 on that. 39 and 40. Sorry. They're not even paying me for this, and I'm doing all these edits for them.
Mm.
Okay. So here is a slide I put together about the new changes for this mansion tax. The proposed change is official as of Monday, June 30th, 2025. New Jersey implemented a new tiered mansion tax that shifts the cost from the buyers to the sellers. So here's what you need to know. What changed? Well, starting July 10th, 2025, sellers are now responsible for an additional 1% tax on any residential and most commercial property that sells for over $1 million. This is a major shift from the previous law where the buyers were the ones paying the 1% mansion or luxury tax, but it also applies to raw land. So it's a tiered tax. The new tax will be paid entirely by the seller in the amounts in excess of $1 million. The existing 1% mansion tax remains, but the responsibility shifts from the buyer to the seller, amending the 2004 law. $2 million and more, there's a 2% tax the seller pays. $2.5 million, 2.5% tax on the seller. $3 million, 3% tax on the seller, and $3.5 million and above, there's 3.5% tax to the seller. Now there's RTF calculators that can be found on the next slide. These realty transfer tax calculators. You could include them on your own websites or as resources. You guys may want to snap a picture of the slide since none of this info is in the book, but this is the law. Okay.
I did.
All right, so here's the realty transfer tax calculators. There's one I have here from NJ County Recording. That's a good one. You got one from the Realtors Association on their website. There's a RTF calculator and the mansion tax calculator, which actually they gave it a different name. It's actually not called the mansion tax anymore. What do they call it? They actually changed the name for it. We can actually see it if we look on these websites. But anyway, I have RTF tax schedules, New Jersey Treasury tax page, and the property tax information page to get all this information. I believe that this is in the Word document. So let's take a look in the RTF. I'll search that. RTF calculator. Okay. Yeah, okay, I have all this information included here. The mansion tax, the luxury tax. Okay, so this is all the information from the slides. I just put it here. All right, so if we were to click on one of the calculators here, take a look at it.
Realty one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it takes us to New Jersey County recording. If you sell your property, how much do you think your property is worth? Your homes, you know? Let's just say you have a house that's worth $600,000.
Okay.
And
Means that's the price I bought, right?
yeah, well, yeah, you bought the house for $600,000. Let's just say there's no disability, you're not a senior citizen or anything like that. So
Right.
Calculate additional transfer fee. Yes or no?
Mhm.
I don't know what that means. Okay, so calculate. You're going to pay as the seller, because the seller always pays the transfer fee, $5,185 tax to sell your house.
Hmm.
Now, where does that money go? Goes to the general fund so your politicians can blow it on whatever they want. Everyone that sells a property has to pay these taxes. Like even if it's at half of that, let's put it at $300,000 house. Let's calculate it. $1,715 for a $300,000 house. Let's just say that it's a $1 million property. You got to have another zero on there. Or
Wow.
You change the price? If you change the value?
I changed it to
Yeah.
$1. Here, actually, let's do this because I don't think his calculator is doing it right. It's because they're doing it based on over $1 million. So let's make it $1,001.
Oh, okay.
So at $1 million, you're paying $9,575
Mhm.
tax on $1 million property. If it's $1,001, you're paying $19,581. So that extra dollar costs you an extra $10,000.
So, wow, it's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. Do you think that that's a fair amount that the government's taking from us? What's the benefit that we're getting for this tax?
Benefit.
No taxation without representation, remember. We're not seeing any benefit to this. None. They put it to the general fund, and then they say, oh, we'll use it on things that help. You need to specifically state, what is this tax money being used for? You can't be like, oh, well, we'll put it in the general fund and it's being used on stuff. I cannot quantify stuff.
The president, they told they're going to fire a lot of people from the government because they,
Heard something about that before in this morning too.
yeah,
What it's all about. But he said
Yeah.
he's going to be getting rid of a lot of people in government for some reason.
because I think maybe they want to shut up they don't want to approve, I believe I don't remember how they call the budget for the year. They don't want to approve it. They say if you didn't do that, so I'm going to fire all these people because we're spending a lot of money. We're not supposed to spend it. They
Yeah,
do not.
they should be canned. It's the taxpayer dollars. They shouldn't be wasteful for it, and they should be filing their budgets, for their departments and filing their bills and everything. Okay. So let's look at the New Jersey Realtors website. I got a link here.
So Victor, whoever has property of 1 million up, they are paying 9,581 plus 10,000?
If it's 1,000,001, they're
1
paying
million.
$1,000 additional.
That's not right.
Yes, this is Governor Murphy's new, well, that's the mansion tax. So they pay the realty transfer fee of that 9,000 and change plus the mansion tax of $10,000.
$10,000.
That's that 1%. But Governor Murphy now raised it to up to 3%, depending on the value of the property.
Yeah.
Okay, so actually, let's look at the name here, because here on the Realtors website, can you guys see the Realtors website?
Okay.
You guys see the same screen I am? It says New Jersey Realtors up here?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, okay. So on here, here's the realty transfer tax calculator they got here as well. But they also have, okay, that mansion tax, they now call it the graduated percentage fee. Wait. Is that right? Yeah, they call it the graduated percentage fee. Okay, whatever. Now you go to their website and you look up more information about it at the Treasury Department here.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, they give you more information about it, but a lot of this is just simply BS. The amendments are transfers over $1 million. Okay, it basically goes to a general fund. Oh, wait, sorry. Oh, that's not it. Here we go. So I got a calculator here. Let's just say that it's not just $1 million. Let's say it's not just let's see how the $1,001 works here. So the sale price you entered is $1,001. The realty transfer fee you will pay for selling your home is $9,575. For homes with a sale price over $1 million, there's a graduated percentage fee imposed on the seller, calculated based on the sales price. The fee for the home is $10,000. So the total fee is $19,575 for selling a $1,001 home.
Oh. Where the deed is recorded.
So look, even if you were selling a house at $1.2 million, so $1,200,000. Let's get rid of that dollar at the end. You got an extra $200,000 for your home, $1.2 million. Let's see what the tax would be. $23,995. So you're paying an extra $12,000 in taxes.
Extra.
Extra for that additional $200,000.
Extra 2,000.
Let's see if your property is, let's keep it at that extra penny there. An extra penny, not even a dollar. It's $2 million and 1 penny.
Wow.
You're paying $20 and change in realty transfer tax and $40,000 in that mansion tax or
Additional.
graduated percentage fee for a total of $61,000, $61,500 in total fees.
Wow.
Much.
Do you think that this is going to drive up the cost of real estate? I mean, somebody who bought a property for $2 million, now they're looking to sell it for $2 million, but they got to pay $61,000 in taxes. They're going to want to get at least $2,062,000 for their property, right? It's going to drive up the cost so they could cover the cost there. Dare we even see $3 million and a penny. 123,775 in taxes. 90,000 in that mansion tax. What about 3.5 million and a penny? Goes up to $162,325. Holy crap.
Yes.
And that's going to be added into the sale price of each individual home if that's a big piece of land that was bought for development.
Hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of calculators here. I have one here from another website called House It, where they show you, let's see, $1,500,000 sale price, single family home, no tax exemptions. This is your taxes. You're paying $30,000 in transfer fee. If you have a $350,000 home, you're paying $1,280. And they talk about seniors. Okay, let's just say that you got an exemption because you're senior citizens blind, or if you got low income housing. So senior citizens, they would pay a $250 transfer fee, $255 transfer fee. What about low income? They got the same discount. All right. That's how that calculator works. It gives you a breakdown on that too. And then here's for the laws and tax schedules. So basically that tax schedule, when we're looking at that realty transfer tax on this website, this website to show it. Oh. When you look at the graduated percentage, when I hover over here, the graduated percentage fee, you see it's a tiered fee. 10% for sales over 1 million up to 2 million. For the amounts between 2 million and 2.5 million, it's 2%. I believe that's the way that it works. The fee is calculated on a percentage of the total price based on the following brackets. Oh, no. It's just based on the total price. Yeah, let's make sure of that so that I know what I'm talking about here. So if we have a $3 million property, let's look at it in a regular calculator here. 3 million, that's what's it, 7 zeros? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 zeros and 1 and the 3. That's 7 decimal places. So we got $3 million property times 3%. Nope, that would be 90,000. Okay, so it is tiered. So basically it's 1% for the amount over to 200 to 2 million, 2% for the amounts between 2 million and 2.5 million, 2.5% for the amounts between 2.5 million and 3 million, 3% for the amounts within 3 million and 3.5 million, and 3.5% for any amount over 3.5 million. So it's not just taking the sale price of $3 million and timesing it by 3%. It's bracketed.
It's tiered, right?
Yeah, it's tiered, just like the realty transfer fee is.
Yeah, tiered, they call it. Yeah.
By the way, these links are in the ClassLinks Word document. They're also in the slides, but I could also share them with you if you want me to right now. I could give you those resources.
The same one, right?
Yeah, what you see on the slide here.
Yeah.
That's what I just shared with you.
Okay.
Okay, so now in your book on the bottom page 397, they should format this better because this is tiered as well. So the the upper part of this slide, okay, this part, the upper part of this page in this section here, that's why I put separating here and separating the left from the right. So the top part is for regular homes with people that are not blind, disabled, or low income. Okay, you can cross out moderate income because this has nothing to do with moderate income. This has to do with low income. You know, moderate income does not get this tax break, and I should make a note of that here on page 397. They should remove that wording because that's deceptive.
Which one? Which one?
You see right over here, it says senior citizens, blind persons, disabled, and low and moderate income property.
Yeah.
Moderate.
Oh, the moderate, only moderate. Okay.
That's like when politicians, they try to obfuscate the conversation. Like they say, like right now, they're talking about the violence from these crazy whacked out people. They're like, well, there's people like that on both sides. You know, they try to minimize it and say, oh, there's people like that. Well, right now, by far, you're seeing the violence from one side more than the other. Okay, so that's the same thing here, where they're trying to say, you know, this discount's available for low and moderate income people. Why? Because moderate income is the middle class. That's the majority of the people out there. So they try. Okay, but the majority of people out there are not getting this discounted rate. They're paying this rate up here. Okay, so standard transactions and new construction, that's for middle class, the moderate income and rich. Okay, will pay these fees. Okay, so there's a discounted realty transfer tax rate for people that are senior citizens, blind, disabled, or low income, and they pay a lower rate. For example, and the left side is for property values up to and including $350,000. And the right side is for properties over $350,000. So $350,000 and 1 penny uses the chart on the right side. So let's just say that we got a property selling for $150,000. How is this calculated? What is the realty transfer tax? Well, for the first $150,000, you're paying $2 for every $500 of value. So you have to take 150,000 divided by 500. It goes in 300 times, and then times that by $2, and it's $600 in realty transfer tax. Now, for the amount, if the property was 200,000, well, we calculate the first 150,000 in that first tier. And then we need to calculate the amount in the next tier, which is $50,000. So we take 50,000 divided by 500, goes 100 times $3.35, and that's $335. So if this house sold for 200,000, you'd be paying $935 in transfer fees. You see, you don't just skip to the second tier because it's 200,000 and then do 200,000 divided by 500 times 335. Yeah, you got to do it tiered.
Tiered.
Now, tell me that rich people don't pay their fair share. They've been paying their fair share for a while. Stop being jealous of them. Hopefully, you'll be one of them one of these days, you know? So look over here for $150,000, the first $150,000 value, you're paying $2 for every 500. Here you're paying $2.90 for every 500. For the next bracket, you're paying $335. If you're in this side, you're paying $425 for every 500. And then for the amounts between 200,000 up to 350, you're paying $390. On this side, for the amounts between 200 up to 550, you're paying $480. And up and up and up.
Uh-huh.
And this is that mansion tax. You see, I wrote in here, I changed the word seller down the bottom. You may want to cross that out and let them know it's paid by the seller now. And it's a graduated tax up to 3%. So I'm going to write under that graduated. $3.5%.
How are we counting this one?
I'm sorry?
How to count this one? 200,000 divide 500, you said? The second line.
For the amounts between, what, on the left-hand side?
Yeah.
Okay. So how much money is between 150 and 200,000? That's $50,000.
50,000. Yeah, yeah.
So you take 50,000 divided by $500. How many times does 500 go into 50,000? 100 times. So 100 times $3.35. That's $335.
Okay, 50,000 divide
By 500.
By
by
$500.
500, so 149.25.
Wait. How many times? For 50,000,
50,000 divide 500.
it should go be 100 times. So now you take 100 times 335. Because 500 goes into 50,000 100 times.
500. Then 100, yes. And then multiply by 335.
And then you multiply it by the tax amount of 335. Yes.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Okay.
And that's 335 is what? That's
That's the amount of tax in that bracket. But you got to also have the first tier. So you add the first tier of $600 plus the tax for the amount for that second $50,000 within the next tier.
okay.
Total tax is $935.
Got it.
It's going to be question on the test. I don't think so, right? Yes.
They're not going to give you a math problem on this, but I just want you to know how to do it.
Yeah. But that's
But they're not going to
Yes.
give. Yeah, they're not going
there's
to
a
give.
la calculator they do Mauricio right now. So
There's no calculator.
yeah.
Who pays the tax? Who pays the realty transfer fee?
Yeah.
It's paid
Eh,
for the seller always.
Right now they do everything easy. They put a calculator. They use that. You have to know exactly what's coming from. Well, you don't have to do each one probably, right?
I'm sorry. You have to.
I say you want to know how's coming the number.
Yeah, you want to. They come up with those numbers. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Because you could come up with your own Excel file and create your own calculator for doing this stuff too. And you could
Yeah.
just go to the state's website, the treasurer's website, see what the numbers are for the different brackets, and you can come up with your own calculators.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So that's the governor raising prices on everything on his way out the door. Not that I could afford a $3.5 million property or anything, but you know, I think this is wrong. You know, you shouldn't be taxing people just because they got more money. You know, the tax should serve a purpose. It should be a fair tax. You know, as it is, people with more money do pay higher tax rates. So,
Okay.
who prepares the closing statements? let's get this done. We're taking way too long to finish this chapter. Unpaid principal of the outstanding balance being assumed by the buyer, interest. Okay, but this is basically talking about the closing statements and the prorations. Okay, the interest on the existing assumed mortgage, it's accrued. The buyer's earnest money, unearned portion of the current rents collected in advance, janitorial salary if there's a janitor involved, I guess. Tenant security deposits, purchase money mortgage if it's seller financing, unpaid water bills or real estate taxes are in the arrears. We're going to see about how those things get prorated, but we're going to go from the example. We're just going to do it based on taxes. Okay, items credited to the seller would be the sale price, any fuel, oil on hand that they paid for in advance, the insurance and tax reserves when outstanding mortgage is being assumed by a buyer, the refund to the seller of prepaid water charges or similar expenses, and the portion of the real estate tax paid in advance. So arrears, once again, is at the end of the term for which a payment is due, the opposite of an advance. The responsibility of the attorneys. Okay, so we'll probably get a question on exam about this. Who's responsible for what? Well, the seller's attorney is responsible for all the details about the title. What does that mean? It means they're responsible for clearing up any problems found. The buyer's attorney is responsible for doing the research to discover those problems, usually via a title search and survey. The broker is responsible. Well, each broker is responsible to get their clients to the closing on time with their IDs and any accompanying documents or money that they need to come with, and the keys, including garage door openers and things of that nature. Brokers agents collect their commissions at the closing, but that check is made out to your company. So you then give it to the broker, your broker deposits it in their bank account. Then when it clears, they pay you your commission within 10 days or as soon as the check clears, right? And all sales of real estate are reported to the IRS by whoever the closing agent is. So I guess just arrears here, we're going to once again highlight at the end of the period for which a payment is due. Now, prorations are these final adjustments for all the costs. Who paid for what, who gets a credit for what. We're going to do a math problem about taxes. Once we get to that, anyway. So that's the second paragraph on the top of page 399.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Some of the general rules of prorating are, is generally provided that the buyer owns the property on the day of closing. So therefore, the buyer is responsible for that day's expenses of the property, the taxes, insurance, all that stuff, right? In practice, however, either the buyer or seller may be charged with that day's expenses. Whoever the closing agent puts down is responsible for paying it. They could put one person or the other, or they could split that amount for the day of closing. It's up to whoever the closing agent is, how they calculate. Now, sometimes I get people that are really smart with numbers, but they could be really a-holes. You know, I had this one guy, he was looking over the documents and he comes to the closing and he's like, why am I being charged with today's property expenses? I was like, because you're the buyer, and it's generally held that the buyer owns the property on the day of closing, so you're responsible for today's expenses. So the taxes for today, you need to pay. And he goes like this. Okay, let me see if you can see me here. He goes like this, and he looks at his watch. He's like, it's after 5 o'clock. It's after the end of the business day. And I was like,
Oh, man.
be that guy. You know, listen, this guy was arguing over that day's expenses, that he didn't want to pay them because it's already past the end of the business day. So why should I have to pay with today's expenses? And he made it into such a big deal that he almost got into a fist fight with the seller over it. And
Wow.
by the way, that was my client, the buyer. So I'm sitting over there to the side, and I'm hoping that the seller just punches him in the face, because I was like, this guy is such a pain in the neck, this whole transaction like that. That's only like one example of the nightmare of a client he was. You know, he was that big of a pain in the butt. So, but at the end of the day, the seller did a pretty sharp thing. So the guy's like arguing over, why should I have to pay for these expenses? Da, 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 da. And he's like, okay, you know what? We could do this another way. We could reschedule the closing so that it happens in the morning. And then that way you could enjoy the full day and pay for that full day's expenses. He said, but I'm going out of town and I won't be back for another 2 weeks. So if we could schedule the closing for 2 weeks from now at the and make sure that it's in the morning, so this guy gets his full day's property expenses in, so it's worth it for him. And he's
Yeah.
like, I got my stuff in the moving truck. I'm ready to move there, you know. And the seller's like, how's that my problem? You want to enjoy the full day's expense. You don't want to pay unless you enjoy the full day's expenses. Well, we're going to arrange for you to enjoy the full day as the owner and pay that expenses. So we're going to reschedule this closing to be 2 weeks from now. It's going to happen in the morning, and then you could pay that day's expenses. Okay? How about we do that? And he's, oh, I was like, you either close today and you pay them, or we close in 2 weeks and you could enjoy the full day. Now, keep in mind, the amount he was arguing over was less than $20.
Oh my God.
It's just
Can't believe it.
I learned, long ago, a valuable lesson in real estate. Never underestimate the cheapness of people.
Oh, wow.
I don't take any of it personal. It's like, this is a business transaction for me. You can let your emotions get involved in it, and then you can start getting mad at people. But you know what? Then they're occupying space in your head rent free. So I'll just watch it. It's like a show it's like I step back and it's like a television show that's happening in front of me. Your life will have a lot more peace to it,
That's true.
Listen, you study the teachings of Deepak Chopra, and he tells you, just learn to let go. Just learn to let go. You let go of the things around you, and everything will become so much easier in life, okay? So that's a perfect,
Question.
huh?
Where did the guy came from with the business day ended to the half day? Where did it come from? That argument. It does such exist.
Yeah, he was arguing over that.
Yeah, but where it come from that point? From where? Because it's not such a point.
He was examining the closing documents, and all, at the time it was the HUD-1 RESPA statement. Now it's called the CD. But back then, the HUD-1 RESPA statement, he's like, why am I being charged with today's expenses? Because it's a breakdown of every expense. So he's like, why am I being charged with today's expenses? And he goes like this, it's after the business day. It's after 5 o'clock. Why should I have to pay today's expenses?
5 o'clock. Yeah, he said after half a day. 5 o'clock, yes. Yes, ended the business day. Yeah, 5 o'clock.
Yeah, so he made a big deal about it. So if he came proper, he was barking at people and kind of yelling at them over it, So he rubbed everybody the wrong way. So the seller, this guy's being a D, not using the swear.
Wow.
And you know what? Screw him. He's like, so he came at him a different way. He's like, okay, let's do the closing in 2 weeks from now. You're like, you want to be a D? I can be a D. We can both be like that, because he just came at it all wrong. If he came politely and said, can we just split today's expenses? Why am I being charged with today's expenses? But he came out just like out the gate, like in an accusatory way, yelling at everybody and, you know, I gotta pay today's expenses, you know, and he came off just wrong, rubbed everybody wrong, you know. So like everybody was just sitting there watching. Everybody was actually hoping this guy was going to get popped, but he ended up taking the diplomatic approach to it. He said, "Okay, we can just close in 2 weeks from now," and then he eventually settled, and he was like, "Okay, I'll pay for those expenses." And he's like, "Yeah, I know."
He's acting like a lawyer. You know, some people, they think they know everything. Yeah.
I guess, and he looked at the numbers and he caught it. He's like, "Why am I being charged with today's expenses?" You know, and yeah, I made a big deal about it. I mean, dude, look at it. It was like $19. You know, come on, relax. You know,
Smart payments.
never underestimate the cheapness of people, like I said. So, with the general rules of how to do prorations, it says the rules of customs governing the computations of prorations for closing a real estate sale can vary. It's generally provided that the buyer owns the property on the day of closing, so they're responsible for that day's expenses. But in practice, however, either buyer or seller can be charged with that day's expenses, or they could even split them. You know, the mortgage interest, generally the real estate taxes, water taxes, and similar expenses, are computed in some areas using a 360-day in a year and 30 days in each month. However, the rules in other areas provide computing prorations on the basis of the actual numbers of days in the month. Instead of basing it on a 360-day calendar year, they base it on the actual 365-day calendar year. So, as far as we're concerned, when it comes to exam questions, first of all, we'll never do this because we're not part of the settlement statements. But on exams, if they give you a math problem about prorations, which you'll probably get on state exam, just pay attention to the way the question is asked, it's worded, because it'll usually deal with proration of taxes. If they tell you it's based on a 360-day calendar year, or if it's based on a 365-day calendar year, you just take the different approach of doing the math. Because 360-day calendar year, every month has 30 days. You don't need to know which months have more than 30 days or less than 30 days, okay? Because you're not going to have a calendar in front of you, and apparently a lot of people don't know which months have more or less than 30 days, but I'll show you the way to remember that. Special assessments are those municipal taxes for improvements that the municipality did, right? And these things can be charged over a period of years, but the seller is required to pay these things. They should not be passing those payments off. It's basically unpaid taxes. So the seller should be required to be paying those off. Rents are usually adjusted on the actual number of days in the month. And whatever the rent is, you divide it by the number of days in the month, and whatever day we're closing on. If the buyer owns the day of the closing, then the buyer is going to get the credits for any rents on that day. Then we got security deposits. Well, they'll all be transferred completely to the new owner, because the new owner will be responsible for paying it back to the tenant if there are no damages. And unpaid wages, okay, well, let's not even get into that. Okay, so here we go. The arithmetic of prorations, we're winding down now at the end of this chapter. You got to find out if it's 365 or 360-day calendar year. So the yearly charge is divided by 360-day year based on 30-day months. Or it can be based on a yearly charge that's divided by 365 days. But then you'd need to know how many actual days are in each month to be able to get the problems right, okay? And I put together this little here for you. Some people in kindergarten were taught this. Apparently, my kindergarten teacher never taught me this. And I did not know. I always had to look at a calendar to remember how many days are in a month. But apparently, there's a nursery rhyme out there, okay, that teaches you the same thing. You see this?
We do this way. In India, we from the childhood, we were doing it this.
Yeah, you count the knuckles, right? The knuckles. Okay, so there's more than 30 days in a month. There's 31 days on every knuckle, okay? And the valleys, you got the hills and the valleys. So in the hill, there's 31 days, and all the valleys, it's less than 31 days. February, it's 28 unless it's a leap year, and that's 29. March 31, April 30, May 31. So every knuckle is 30 days. Every valley is 30 days. Every knuckle is 31 days. Every valley is 30 days, except for February. It's 28 days or 29 on a leap year. Now,
And July and August is knuckle. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, you got back-to-back knuckles here. There's no space in between. That's a valley. It's back-to-back knuckles. Correct. So the knuckles have 31 days. The gaps have 30, except for February, which has 28, except leap year 29. And the rhyme is basically 30 days have September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, except February, 28 days clear, and 29 each leap year. That's the way that the rhyme goes. And when I recorded this, I was so monotone. So you could either turn on the audio here and play it, or you can see the next slide. I got the video here where I made a video like that explaining this. And listen to my voice here. It is so, I should have recorded it, but we recorded it. Gaps in order to figure out how many days are in each month. The knuckles have 31 days, and the gaps have 30, except February, which only has 28 days unless it's a leap year. Here's a little rhyme to remember how many days in each month. So monotone. 30 days have September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, except February. 28 days clear, 29 each leap year. There you go. Yeah, I put that on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah, with commercial included.
Way to teach people to remember. Look, a lot of kids look. Not only in kindergarten, I wasn't taught it. I wasn't taught it all through high school either. Up until high school, I was never taught this. I learned this after the fact when I was a grown-up, already teaching already in real estate. And I was like, and otherwise, I always looked at the calendar, and I was like, "There's a rhyme for that." And you're like, "Yeah, we learned it in kindergarten." And I was like, "Damn." I was like, "You're privileged." I went to one of these schools where they never taught me that stuff. I got deprived of my education. I was never taught that simple rhyme. Okay, so once again, here's the arithmetic of the math. This is repeated here again on page 400 at the bottom. Yearly charge is divided by 360-day year, or 12 months of 30 days each. The monthly, this is very confusing if you were just to read it.
Yeah, they're very confusing.
Yeah, the monthly charge is divided by the actual number of days in the month, according to the closing. And the yearly charge is divided by 365 to determine the daily charge. Okay.
So monthly charge means 30 days divided by whatever the whole month. How many? If you close on 15, so you're gonna divide by 15, so it's gonna be.
Confused the hell out of me. So they're saying, like, if you got a question on the exam and it says to use a 360-day calendar year, that means that each month has 30 days.
Right.
So, but then they talk about yearly charges divided, by 360-day years, and 12 months with each 30 days. But then the monthly charge is divided by the actual number of days in the month of the closing to determine the amount. Well, how could that be? It's not that the math won't add up.
Yeah, it's going to be different.
Yeah, you can't have 360-day calendar year, but then using the actual number of days in the month. Okay, they're using the actual number being 30. If the question says to use a 360-day calendar year, that means that every month has 30 days. So you're going to base that as the actual number of days in the month. Now, in real life, I mean, they say that some situations, what was it? Mortgage interest, generally real estate taxes, water taxes, and simple expenses are computed by using a 360 days in a year and 30 days in a month. However, the rules in other areas provide computing prorations on the basis of the actual number of days in the calendar month. So unless the question tells you to use a 360-day a year, you're going to use the 365. But the question will tell you which one to use. And if it's a 360-day year, then you know every month has 30 days. And that's what you're going to do your calculation on for the daily charge. So makes it a lot easier.
And if it's 365, you count as if they ask you for 365 days.
The actual days are in each month.
Yeah.
Okay. But I just taught you the rhyme to know how to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So now you know. Okay, so let me put in here something about page 400 to clarify explanations. I don't know if they will do all these modifications because they said this is just an update. It's not a complete rewrite of this book, so we'll see. All right, so in the closing, the seller's attorney is responsible for all the details. We already read that somewhere else and we highlighted it, but here we'll highlight it again. Page 401. Under closing, the first sentence.
Yeah.
So basically, the seller's attorney is responsible for finding out, for clearing up any issues that are discovered by the buyer's attorney, and they bring it to their attention. Okay. And here I just did a big write-up. I created a bunch of slides here that explain the prorations of math versus the way the book does it. Said attorneys, title companies usually handle this, but in some areas in the southern part of the state of New Jersey, like if you look here, even on this previous slide, in some areas of southern New Jersey, buyers and sellers do not use attorneys, so real estate agents take a more active role in the closings, so they may actually be doing these mathematical formulas and settlement sheet statements. Okay, but really in practice, usually it's a title company that does it or an attorney. So prorations are the final adjustments at the closing for expenses paid in advance by the seller or the buyer, and crediting the appropriate person with who paid for an item for which they did not fully benefit before the closing, or for those items that have not yet been paid for. Some examples of this would be unused heating oil in the tank by the closing date, or prepaid taxes for a period. The owner will sell the property before the end of a period, or if they didn't pay the taxes and the buyer pays them. The basic rule of thumb is to ask the question, which I taught you, who gets a credit? And the answer will almost always be whoever paid for it, whatever it.
Buyer, yeah, they get it, yeah.
It depends. What is it?
Depends, yeah.
Who paid for it? Whatever it is, whoever paid for it, they're the one that gets the credit for it. So the only exception will be for items that neither the buyer or the seller pay, like rent and security deposits. So it is generally accepted the buyer owns the property and is responsible for the expenses on the closing date, but in reality, either party could be charged with them or they could split them. So prorations can be for various items. Okay, we learned in that. And we also just spoke about and learned about 360-day calendar years versus 365. It's a 360-day calendar year.
Actual number of the days. Got it.
Okay. So now we finally get down to this. These are slides I'm working on. I did not finish them, so some of these numbers could be screwed up. But basically, I want you to know this. This tool is a tool I'm teaching you. If you get a math problem about prorations at the closing, I want you to take it out a scrap piece of paper and a pen, and I want you to draw along the box like this, and you're gonna write the initial for each month, and then make sure you count them and make sure you got 12 there, because sometimes I rush this and I realize I missed a month or something. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, December. Okay, you got to make sure that you got them all there. Okay, make sure you got 12. There's 12 months in a year. So we can write down all the letters first, and then put them all in one long box. And then I'll start off by drawing at one of the ends a long line, and then and then two small ones, and another long line. 1, 2, 3. And then two more small lines. 1, 2, and then a long line for the third. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And now you can visually see where each quarter of the year starts, because taxes are billed quarterly, right? So you're going to get your tax bill in January. You're going to get it again here. You're going to get it again here and again here. And then this is the end of the quarter, right? So you can visually now see the beginning and end of every quarter. There's 3 months in a quarter, right? It makes your life so much easier when getting a problem on exam. So here's a math question. It says, using a 360-day calendar year, what does that mean? How many days are in a month?
30.
30. So this way we don't need to worry about, well, is it a year? Are we in a year? This is why exams should always use the 30-day, or they should tell you it's not a leap year, you know? So if the taxes on a property for sale are $9,500 per year, and the city paid the first quarter taxes, and the closing takes place on March 1st, who gets a credit and for how much? So how would this, let's see, hold on, let me pull out my slide here, and I'm going to do a little editing to it. I'm going to do a little drawing on it.
The first one is
Monthly.
263, 88.
I'll do a little drawing on mine here, so let me get out my drawing tools. Hold on. So I want to show you how to use this tool, though, this visualization tool. So the problem says the seller paid through the first quarter taxes. That means they paid the taxes up until this point, right? Everybody see that?
Yeah.
And the closing takes place when? March 1st?
March 1st.
March. So the closing is taking place right here. So the amount of time in between here and here, well, between here and here, the seller paid the taxes for, but they're not going to enjoy it because they sold the property right here. So they're going to get a credit for that because the seller paid the taxes up to this point, but they're selling the property here. So who gets a credit? Because this is a two-part question. It says how much of a credit will be, but it also says who gets the credit. So who gets the credit, we can visually see now without even thinking about it, just by writing it down, making these marks on your scrap paper, we can see the seller gets a credit. Okay, now how much do they get a credit for? Well, they get a credit for a full month. Because the seller paid the first quarter taxes and the closing takes place on March 1st. And generally, who owns the property on the day of closing?
Buyer.
Buyer. So the buyer is going to own the whole entire month of March, even though the seller paid the taxes for it. So how much is a whole month going to cost? Well, $9,500 is the taxes. We divide that by 12 months. So each month is $791.66.
Divide.
Right? So if we divide that by 30 days, because it's 360-day calendar year, we can see each day is $26.38 per diem per day. But we don't need to do all that because the sellers, the buyer is going to pay for the 4 months expense. So they're going to get a credit for $790. The seller is going to get a credit for $791.66. Right? So we could put an end to that slide by me just making that notation here.
Because it's closing on March 1st. That's why.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So this is the amount they get a credit for.
I'm sorry. I think maybe the seller has credit for 263.88. 263.88. The seller has credit.
Well, 12 months, they're going to get a credit for 1 full month. Because if you do 9,500 divided by 12 months.
Yeah, but so he live over there, right?
I'm sorry?
The seller live over there. So he pay and he live there.
Well, no, the closing is taking place on March 1st.
Uh-huh.
It's generally that the buyer owns the property on the first day,
Uh-huh.
closing day, which is the first of the month.
Uh-huh.
So the seller's not going to be there at all during March.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, you could do it like this. You could do 9,500 divided by 360 days. You could do it that way too. So if we
Uh-huh.
do that, what is that? What does that come out to? Let me see. Oh, sorry.
2638.
So yeah, 9,500 divided by 360 days, because they said 60-day calendar year. That's $26.38. So it's the same thing as if we divide it by 20
Right,
divided by
Mhm.
30. Okay.
right. Mhm.
Now, if there's 30 days in the month, times that by 30, and it's $791.66. So they'll get the credit for the full month.
Right. So who gets the credit? Is the seller gets the credit, and how much? That's the 791.66.
Correct.
And now we have to see what is that 14 days.
No.
So 30 days in the
Okay,
month.
remember.
Yeah.
This
sorry.
is a different problem I was creating. I was working on these slides for multiple problems here. So
I see. Okay. I said, where is that 17 and 14?
Look at the next slide. At the next slide here, we have question 2. Using a 360-day calendar year, if the taxes on a property for sale are $9,500 per year, and the
Mhm.
second quarter taxes, the closing takes place on May 17th. Who gets a credit and for how much? So we did this on this slide. The seller paid the taxes up until here, right?
Mhm.
That's the second,
And
and the closings take place May 17th. So here is May, but here's halfway. It's slightly more than halfway, right? The
14.
amount in between is how many days?
So we're gonna do like this: 2668 times 14 and 17, 2
Yeah.
times.
Well,
So
we know,
14 is
hold on a second. This is based on a 30-day calendar year. So
Yeah.
for the full month of June, that's 30 days, right? We got 30 days for June, right? And then
Mhm.
how many days are left? If every month got 30 days, so it's 30 days minus the closing is taking place on May 17th, so minus 17 days. So 30 days minus 17, that's 13 days. However, the buyer is going to pay for the day's expenses of the closing because they own the property on the day. So we're going to add that 1 day to it. So that's where the 14 days comes from. You follow?
Yep.
Okay, so now we got a total of, well, that's wrong.
No.
Oop,
We have 31 days minus 17.
Okay, no, okay, so we have, yeah, and that comes up to 13, right? But the buyer owns the property on the day of closing, so add that day into it. So it's not minus 17, so we're gonna have to add that actual closing day. So that's why we got 14. Because we added the 13 days plus 1 closing day the buyer pays for. The day of closing the buyer pays for, so it's 14 days.
14 days plus 30.
So for the 30 days, that 1 full month, it's $791.66. And then each day is $26.38. So there's 14 days
No.
times the 26.38. And that gives him 369.32, right? 14
Yep.
times
Mhm.
26.38, right?
But if we close on May 17, so May is 31 days. So 31 days
No.
minus 60.
360-day calendar year.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
This is how they're going to get you if you don't pay attention to the question. You got to
Yeah, 360.
those questions.
So they're confusing it. Here they're giving you month and 360 days they're asking for. So we just have to do with 30 days. That's it.
Yeah.
So
So
30 minus
so you have
16.
1 payment of 791.66, and then if you do 30 days minus the 17th, where the day the closing takes place, that leaves 13 days. However, the buyer owns the property on the day of closing, so add that 1 day back in. So it's 14 days the seller needs to get reimbursed for that first month. So
Yeah.
if it's $26.38 per day, 14 times 26.38, that's $369.32. So now you add $791.66 plus the $369.32, and you get a total of $1,160.98. Let's just round it to $1,161. Okay,
So in this case, who gets the credit?
well, the closing takes place, the seller paid the taxes up to here, the closing's taking place here. So the seller's not going to be living at the property for this period of time in between that they already paid the taxes for. So who gets a credit? Whoever paid for it, who paid for it? The seller. So the seller gets it. Okay, so now we figured out the math, which isn't difficult. We figured out using this chart, it's easy to see who gets the credit,
Mhm.
but this is how they make it hard on exams.
Wow.
Look how they write the answer options. You're going to have multiple choice, 2 with the wrong number and 2 with the right number. But read these answer options and how they read it. You know, credit seller, debit buyer, debit seller. Your head's spinning, right? Credit seller, debit. Why do they word it like that? Well, because in the book, didn't they say whatever is a credit to one side is usually a debit to the other? So this is why they word it this way. Credit seller, debit buyer, debit seller. Now we know that the seller is getting the credit because they paid the taxes up until here, but they're selling the property here. So they're going to get a credit for all that amount. So let's
So
see.
sorry, go ahead.
We take a breath, and then we're going to see which one is the seller getting the credit. We know that both of these have the right number. Now let's see which one has the seller getting the credit, and it is the first one. So it's the first option here. This is the correct
option. Yeah.
Slow it down. I've seen people do the math correct, but then when it comes to reading the answers, their mind gets scrambled when they're reading quietly in their heads. They're like, credit seller, debit buyer, debit seller. And I don't know, they get discombobulated and select the wrong answer.
But that's one way to do more easy. One way.
Okay, what's that?
Okay, so 9,500
Yes.
divided by 360.
Okay.
And then multiply by 44 days. And that's easy way.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I was just walking you through step by step. I try to dumb everything down so everybody can follow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so basically, yeah, that's what we did here. Remember, there's 1 full month, and then there was 14 days here. So if we added that up, that's your 44 days, right? And then you just times that by the per diem amount of 26.38, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's another way of coming up to the same answer. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. It was. It was.
You're right. That's another.
Yeah. No. When you working too much, it's making me crazy. I
did all the additional steps. Well, with many ways to reach the same solution with math,
Yeah.
But,
No. The math is come to
listen.
too many ways to go to Rome.
Yeah. You know math, okay? Usually I use the word math. And I don't even put numbers up on the screen. I just say the word math. People start to hyperventilate. They're scared of it. And I'm like, relax, you got a calculator. You could use the calculator. You don't need to be able to figure out. Relax, take a breath. We just need to follow the steps, and you can plug the numbers into the calculator. It'll figure it out for you. So I show the simple, long way. It's longer. It's a longer way. For you, it's confusing because it's like, why are you doing all these extra steps? You could just do this and get to the answer like that. And I'm like, yes, because not everybody's like that. So I like to teach math the simple, dumbed down way, the dumbed down explanations or the long explanations. Let me not say dumbed down. I like to do the long explanations to people so that they could grasp it a little bit better. Okay. So we see that there was a 30 days in each month. So there's full 30 days for this month. And how many days were left in this month? It was 13, but plus the day of closing is 14. So that's why we did 30 plus 14 is 44. Then we times that by the per diem expense. You could have just done 9,500 divided by 360. Instead, here I did 9,500 divided by 12 divided by 30. I know that's driving you nuts, but it comes out to the same answer. Yes, correct. You're right. You're right. Okay, but the math isn't hard here, especially since you can use calculators. And this, listen, this is a tool that'll be valuable for you, that'll help you easily visualize who gets a credit, though. Instead of trying to figure it out in your head, you draw this down. This will tell you right off the bat, makes it visually obvious who gets a credit. Now you do the math. And then when you read the answers, take a breath, because it's going to be worded this way. Credit seller, debit buyer, look for the right answer where the seller gets the credit, and boom, that's it. Okay. And if it was a 365-day, calendar year, you would just do the math based on the actual number of days in the month and based on 365 days. Okay, so either way, this is the end of it. That's it for this chapter.
Okay, key terms.
We got to do the key terms to review. And then there's going to be a goof email that I'm going to share with you guys. Okay, hold on 1 second. I got to pull that out and have it ready for you. I usually read this to every class when we get through this session. These are some resources I usually, I got these in the shared Google Drive, but let me see. There's a goof email. It's called the abstract of title letter. What is an abstract? It's a condensed history of all the documents that can be found in the public record pertaining to the ownership, right? That's what an abstract of title is, right? Actually, I might as well do it now, read it now before we get into the key terms to review. Review the key terms to review, and then we'll be done. Okay, so here's a goof email. I'll share it with you guys here on screen, okay? I like to read this after chapter 21 because we've already learned about titles, we learned about chains of title, we learned about all this. So this is a goof. I hope it's not a real, I hope it's not real, but this is a goof email. I'm just going to refer to it as a goof because hopefully it's not true, but you never know these days. It says, you got to love this lawyer. Everyone who has ever bought a house will enjoy this. A New Orleans lawyer sought an FHA loan for a client who lost his house in Hurricane Katrina and he wanted to rebuild. He was told that the loan would be granted if he could prove satisfactory title to the property being offered as collateral. The title to the property dated back to 1803, which took a lawyer 3 months to track down. After sending the information to the FHA, he received this following reply from them. You guys can see the letter too, right?
Yep.
Okay. So it says the actual letter. Upon review of your letter adjoining your client's loan application, we note the request is supported by an abstract of title. And while we compliment the able manner in which you have prepared and presented the application, we must point out that you've only cleared title to the proposed collateral property back to 1803. Before final approval can be accorded, it'll be necessary to clear title back to its origin. Annoyed, the lawyer responded as follows. Your letter regarding title case number whatever has been received. I note that you wish to have the title extended further than 194 years covered in the present application. I was unaware that any educated person in this country, particularly those working in the property area, would not know that Louisiana was purchased by U.S. from France in 1803, the year of origin identified in our application. For the edification of the uninformed FHA bureaucrat, the title to the land prior to U.S. ownership was obtained from France, which had acquired it by the right of conquest from Spain. The land came into possession of Spain by the right of discovery made in the year 1492 by a sea captain named Christopher Columbus, who had been granted the privilege of seeking a new route to India by the Spanish monarch Isabel. The good Queen Isabella, being a pious woman, meaning very religious, and almost as careful about the titles as the FHA, took the precautions of securing the blessing of the Pope before she sold her jewels to finance Columbus's expedition. Now, the Pope, I'm sure you may know, is the emissary of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, and God is commonly accepted to have created this world. So therefore, I believe it's safe to presume that God also made the part of the world called Louisiana. God, therefore, would be the original owner of the origin, and his origin dates back before the beginning of time, the world as we know it, and the FHA. I hope you find God's original claim to be satisfactory. Now may we have our damn loan. And it says he got the loan. I thought it was cute, you know. It's one of those cute things. It's real estate related. It's a bit of a goof. I know it has a little bit of a religious overtone to it, but either way, I thought it was a cute letter pertaining to real estate that we could tie together and walk away with a little bit of a chuckle. But that is interesting, and it does show you how this could be a real thing right here. But I refer to it as a goof email because as the lawyer said, I hope that anybody that works in the government, especially in the real estate property field, knows that Louisiana was when it was purchased. So that's when we became part of this country. So how far back do you want us to date it? Back to the days of the Mayans? I mean, where are we going here? All right. So let's do the key terms to review, and we're done with the class. And then I'll give you guys all a big congratulations, and we'll do a follow-up answering on any questions of where you go next. Okay. So key terms 1. There are 2 key terms to review on page 403. Money to be paid by one party at closing. What do we call money that's to be paid by one party?
Debit.
It's a debit. 10 is A. A sworn statement.
Actual notice?
No, a sworn.
Affidavit.
An affidavit.
Affidavit, yeah. Sorry.
3 is B. After the end of a period for which a payment is due. After the end.
Actual notice?
After the end of a period for which a payment is due.
Arrears?
Arrears. 4 is C. Title traced from each owner to the following one. What do you call it?
That's
Change the title.
Chain of title.
Yeah. See, I told you there's a bunch of links in a chain, right? Instead they said title traced from each owner to the following one. You got to remember the story I told you about. There's many owners, a link in the chain, right?
Right.
The DNA.
Yeah, 6 is D, chain of title. An account of what the borrower paid, what the seller paid, and what was paid by others. Where can you find all that information? An account of all the money in the real estate transaction. The amount of what the borrower paid, what the seller paid, and what was paid by others. Where's all this notations made?
Closing disclosures?
Yes, on the closing disclosure, the CD, 7 is E, as in Edward. Money due and payable to one party at closing. What do you call money that's owed to you?
Credit.
A credit. 9 is F. There you go. A condensed history of all documents affecting a parcel of real estate.
Abstracted title.
Yes, 1 is G. A lawyer's statement after studying an abstract.
Attorney opinion title.
5 is H, correct. Okay, at the end of letter I want you to cross out the words actually knows and write has direct knowledge.
That's the actual notice.
Yeah.
Direct knowledge.
Well, I want you to cross out the words actually knows.
Yeah, I did that. Yeah.
Has direct knowledge. And then
Yeah.
at the end of the next line, I want you to write public records. So this way it reads information one can know by investigating public records. Okay.
Constructive notice.
So there you go. You got the last two there. So
Yeah.
information one has direct knowledge of. That was, once again,
Actual notice.
actual notice. 2 is I. And information one could know by investigating public records is
Constructive notice.
constructive notice.
Constructive notice.
Yes, 8 is J. Correct.
2 is I.
Yes, 2 is I. Correct. And 8 is J.
Yes.
Okay, key terms 2. County's collection of documents relating to real estate.
Realty
Public-
transfer fee.
Public records.
Public records. 5 is A.
Mhm.
Prohibits kickbacks. What prohibits kickbacks?
Treat.
Read. It's a true.
Section 8.
Yeah, Section 8 of RESPA law. RESPA Section 8 is the correct answer. 7 is B. Remember, we read it. Section 8 prohibits kickbacks.
Yeah.
So 7 was B. Okay, tax due the state of New Jersey at closing.
Realty transfer fee.
The RTF, the realty transfer fee. 8 is C. Title company's guarantee of clear title.
Title insurance policy.
Yes, the title insurance policy. 10 is D, as in David. Corrective distribution of future expenses.
Proration.
Prorations. 4 is E, as in Edward. Closing handled by a neutral third party.
Third party.
A neutral third party. Closing happened a neutral third party. You know, when everybody's not sitting at the closing table.
Escrow closing. Escrow.
There you go. 1 is F. A court action to remove the cloud on a title.
Court action. So suit
Suit-
to
suit
quit
to-
title.
The suit to quiet title. Yes, 9 is G, as in Gary. Abstract, lawyer's opinion, or title insurance.
The 6, read. The
Abs-
reason I drink.
abstract, lawyer's opinion, or title insurance. All 3 of these are examples of.
Evidence
of title.
Evidence of title.
2 is H, evidence of title. Correct.
Mhm.
The evidence of title. Okay, good or clear title, reasonably free from defects.
Marketable title.
Marketable or merchantable title is correct. 3 is I. Federal law ensuring that buyer and seller receive detailed accounting of funds at closing.
Treat.
6
Read.
J, TRID. The reason I drink.
The reason I drink.
To drink, right? All right, guys, congratulations. We finished it
Thank-
all.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Yeah.
So Victor, I know I'm gonna
Yeah.
study, but if I have a question, I can ask, right? By text.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, even after you guys pass a school exam, you pass a state exam, you get your licenses. If you should ever have any questions, even though your brokers should be your first go-to, but if you got any questions or anything, or you just like to chit chat, feel free to give me a call. The support doesn't end here, with my,
Which way is good to looking for a sponsor?
well, what area do you want to work in? Well, first of all, what field do you want to work in within real estate? You want to work in residential, with commercial, with investment properties, and property management? What do you want to, what area do you want to work in the real estate field? Is the first question you should ask yourself. Next
Yeah.
question is, what area do you want to cover? Even though you're licensed to cover the entire state, it'll be a pretty good idea to work close to home. And so you find a broker that's not too far from you, as you're
Okay.
familiar with.
Exactly.
And
Thank you.
then you interview that broker. You're going to need a broker to give you training. So remember, in the shared Google Drive, I have a document there for interview questions,
Right, I saw that.
as well as the first couple pages of this book. There's interview questions.
Yes.
Actually, I think I'm going to update them today, the ones that I have. And you take that and you interview brokers. You got to, above the commission splits, the most important thing is training that they give you. And then you could talk about other things, the fees they charge and all that other stuff. They allow you to do buyer rebates, are they HUD approved brokers?
Okay.
You could ask for all those other questions to them. But the main thing is training, and then it comes to all the fees they charge. What do they charge for E&O? Do I got to pay it up front? Can you take it out of my first commission check? All those other questions are secondary. Don't ever pay desk fees, especially as a new agent. Desk fees are
Okay.
you paying rent to hang your license at a brokerage firm.
Okay.
There's enough brokers out there that'll hire you without charging you a fee to hang for the privilege of hanging your license with their firm. Okay.
Okay.
So do that. But anyway, right now you can now cram for the exam and study all your notes and everything. And then when
Yeah,
you're
thank
ready,
you.
you take the school exam. Just do this. You could do it today. Go to our website and go to that page that says register for the school salesperson exam. Fill that out and let me know by sending me a text message that you did, or you could send me the text message now and fill it out later. Just make sure you fill it out because I need that information. And send me a text message with your email address to my cell phone, and
Okay.
I could enter you into the exam system so you'll already be in. And then whenever you're ready, you can take it at 4 o'clock in the morning. You don't need to call me to schedule it. Just remember, you got 6 months to take and pass the school exam.
6
So-
months. Okay.
Okay.
Unlimited tries, but the first 2 are free because they're on us. We pay for this testing company.
That's
So
a company.
we paid for the first 2 attempts. For 2 more attempts, it's $20 because they charge us for
Right.
it. So we just passed that along. Okay.
Until pass. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, guys.
Thank you
Thank you
so much.
Thank you for your
Appreciate
time
it.
and
Yes.
very kind. Okay. Thank you.
All right, guys. Good luck. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.